Well, there goes the Daverhood. Good morning, everybody, and welcome on this Saturday. It is February 8th, 2020. I'm Dave Lefkowitz, preparing you, getting you excited, as it were, for this pre-Valentine's edition that you're going to love of Dave's Gone By, a mix of humor, talk, music, culture, all that sort of stuff that we've been doing for, oh my gosh, 17 plus years in and around various places of what we like to call the Daverhood. So I'm trying to think, should I blab a little and then get to our main intro music? Or should I go right into, I'm going to go right into the music, because that's the kind of jam-packed show that we have for you today on Dave's Gone By. We got not one, but two, count them, two. Well, you can count them pretty easily. If you can count to two, it's like 1 plus 1 equals. Anyway, we'll tell you all about what's going to be on Dave's Gone By soon as we hear our usual wonderful music.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. There goes the Daverhood.
And there was much rejoicing.
Didn't your meds kick in yet?
We got David Lefkowitz is here. He's a Long Island Hearts guy. He's got his own radio show.
I want you all to really enjoy a wonderful program done by a fine artist.
A glorious thing of unparalleled beauty.
Dave's Gone By. Dave is one of my very favorite broadcasters, so keep on listening to Mr. Dave.
Yes, indeed. Here goes the Daverhood with me, Dave Lefkowitz, on our 732nd edition of the Dave's Gone By Facebookio, Podcastio, Programmio of the stream. And by the way, welcome already to our critic friend Brian and, of course, our writer friend Tony, who tunes every week and it already has given us a thumbs up, I assume, for my wife's beautiful handiwork. And we spare no expense on this program. As you can see, she spent, even though my wife is insanely busy at the moment doing all the jobs that she does, she took the time, we got little hearts coming out, for the hearts created and cut out by my darling and adorable wife Joyce, that she took out of old red plastic folders that I had. We didn't even store buy these things. She cut them out. She made them herself. And then we augmented them with, oh my God, priceless, I don't know what the hell, they're Mad Lib tearing trader card thingies that we found in a $1.58 store out on Long Island. So yes, what you're looking at cost what is usually our budget for a month and a half on this program. We're blowing it all right now, right here on this pre-Valentine's edition of the Dave's Gone By show. And by the way, welcome to Shirley, an esteemed playwright has joined us. Also, welcome to Terry. A lot of people giving us thumbs up. Estrella, thank you so much. And I know there's people watching us from the watch party. I do, wow, my wonderful Joyce, although she put this together, is not going to be with us today because she is off to see her parents, which is, I love them too. But yeah, she's left me here all alone, except I'm not actually going to be alone on this episode of Dave's Gone By. First of all, the wonderful, the Jewish Rabbi Saul Solomon will be with us later because he's got some Jewish stuff to do. He will be talking with, well, first of all, one Jew, one Italian. So it's going to be so totally ethnicized. But Rabbi Saul will be talking with two Tony-nominated veteran Broadway and off-Broadway people. We're very, actually quite excited about this. First of all, we're going to have not only an actor, but someone who's made most of a name for himself directing over the past couple of decades, but an actor as well, Lonny Price. Now, Lonny Price was in the original Stephen Sondheim musical, Merrily We Roll Along, one directed by Hal Prince, the one that is kind of a legendary flop. I mean, the musical continues, but you had a very small window to see that original production, and stuff went wrong with it to the point that Price, to kind of exorcise this out of his system, directed a documentary about it 2 or 3 years ago. So Rabbi Saul will be asking him about that, as well as what is one of my favorite musicals of the past 20 or 30 years, bar none. Price co-created and starred in, on Broadway, a musical called A Class Act. I don't know if you got to see it. If you didn't, you can certainly seek out the cast recording because it's wonderful. And it's based on the folks who created A Chorus Line, most specifically Ed Kleban, the guy who did the lyrics for that show, and his life. And well, unfortunately, a fairly short-ish life, or a life that was cut short through illness. But, you know, becoming a lyricist, trying to make his name on Broadway, which is not an easy thing to do, even back in the 70s, and then joining that Lehman Engel Writers Workshop Fridays at 5 thing, which wasn't actually Fridays at 5, I think it was Thursdays at 4, but all of that, and turn that somehow using Kleban's songs into a musical called The Class Act that was funny and moving and wonderful, and that Price, well, he had some difficulties getting that on too, believe it or not. So all of that, Lonny Price, plus he was in the original, honest to God, on Broadway, Master Harold and the Boys, right? Right, he was Master Harold, for gosh sakes. So lots to talk about with Lonny Price, actor and director. So that would be enough for a show, wouldn't it? I mean, come on, for theater people, at the very least, that would be enough to do. Oh, wow, really exciting episode of Dave's Gone By. We got Rabbi Saul Solomon talking to Lonny Price. We got hearts on the wall. What more could you want? Well, how about another actor? Another Tony-nominated actor who has worked on and off Broadway and continues to work and does a lot of TV stuff as well. His name is Lou Liberatore. I'm kind of over-ethnicizing it, maybe to counterbalance Rabbi Saul. But Lou Liberatore was in the original, I don't know if there have been that many revivals, but he was in As Is on Broadway, which has a fairly important distinction. It was the first AIDS-related, very overtly, honestly, openly AIDS-related play on Broadway. It was before The Normal Heart was even off Broadway, and it was just, I mean, they were almost, I think they were the same year, and it was before Angels in America. It was William Hoffman's play that was tackling the AIDS crisis openly and directly in like the early 1980s. Lou Liberatore was in that show, and he's done a bunch of things. As a matter of fact, went to see him just a few months ago in a play written by one of our friends of the Daverhood, theater critic turned playwright, Peter Felicia, had a comedy that was done off-ish a few months ago. That was kind of cute. And the best thing about it was this actor, Lou Liberatore, who, it was kind of neat to be able to say, oh, man, the best thing about this play is this actor, let's see if we can get him on the show. And here he is, will be with us today, especially because he's acting again. He's in another show that is called Paradise Lost. They've actually kind of taken John Milton's poem and turned it into an off-Broadway theater piece with beautiful costumes, apparently. And unfortunately, I've not gotten to see it yet. But it looks amazing, and it's being done by Fellowship for the Performing Arts, which is co-founded by another friend of the Daverhood, a guy named Max McLean, who was on our program, several years ago. But anyway, Lou Liberatore was in that. He was also, check this out, he was in Burn This, opposite John Malkovich. So are we going to ask some John Malkovich? Oh, yes, we are. We certainly are. Let's see, he was also in a TV drama that featured Olivia Newton-John. Yeah, lots of stuff to talk about. He's got a lot of regional theater credits. He's done a lot of, as I said, one-offs and guest starring roles and things on TV. Lou Liberatore. Should be a lot of fun talking with him in the Daverhood as well. So yeah, we've got a double today on Dave's Gone By, which is kind of neat. It means we're also going to have to dispense with a couple of our usual segments because we just don't have time with two guests, but not all of them. We will be doing some of our usual stuff. For example, we will have our Colorado Limerick of the Damned, and this one will be called Arboles, there's a place in Colorado called Arboles. Now, if you know Spanish, you know that means trees. So what we do every week is we take a town or city or a municipality somewhere in Colorado, where Joyce and I used to live for several years, and make an extremely rude and naughty and salacious poem about it. Today is no different, and this particular poem is specifically about Arboles, Colorado. You're not gonna, even if you don't care about theater, you're not gonna want to miss that. But if you do care about theater, not only do we have two theater people on the show, but we will have our weekly Inside Broadway segment. And this is where I tell you some news about the Broadway theater, because I've been a theater critic and theater journalist and playwright and actor and director and all of that for so many years that I love sharing news and stuff about the theater. You know, I just try not to talk your ear off too much about it, but I do, because I say this every week. If you care about movies, the Oscars are coming up this weekend, blah, blah, blah. You see movies everywhere. Every news show, every talk show, every newspaper, items about the movies that are opening up or what is Oscar nominated this year, fine. And certainly you hear all about music and the Grammy Awards and what albums are being released and what famous artists are out there. You know that. But still, to this day, even though it's $1 billion industry, Broadway doesn't get the same amount of love. But it does here on Dave's Gone By. And I will also be reviewing briefly. Speaking of off-Broadway, I saw a show earlier this week by a very talented fellow named Dan Hoyle. And it's called Border People. And I sat in C14. Just in case you were wondering, just in case you thought I was making this stuff up and that I tell you that I'm going to see these shows, but I'm too lazy and actually get on here and just make it up. But no. I saw Border People by the Working Theater Company off Broadway. It's a one-man show by Dan Hoyle, all about people who have both literal borders in their lives where they can't get across from Mexico to the US or back, or from Canada to the US, or just personal internal borders or borders that are imposed upon them by, well, whether it's legal things going on or personal things or drug problems or whatever it is. So he plays all these different characters based on real people that he interviewed and just hung with for days and weeks at a time. People on, very often, the fringes of our society who don't want to be on the fringes anymore. They want to cross into the border and be full Americans, as it were. So I will be reviewing Border People by Dan Hoyle as part of our Inside Broadway segment on Dave's Gone By. And, this is exciting too. We haven't done in a couple of weeks our Storytime segment. This is sweet because, everybody loves a good story. And many, many months ago, I started reading a book here, a book I did not write, but a book about Hansel and his cow, which I found in a gas station, magnificently enough. This is like this children's book from the 1960s about this post-feudal, pre-World War I German boy in Lederhosen who wants nothing more for his impoverished family than to buy them a cow. And he goes through all sorts of horrors and permutations just to get the right cow for his family. I know those of you who tune in week after week, we're just sitting on Tinder hooks and other kinds of hooks to hear what happened with poor Hansel and his fam. So once I finished that, I thought, hey, this is a very cool segment because I don't have to do any work. All I have to do is kind of sit here, read a story, and smirk through it, and I got free material. So I've been doing that week after week, and today, we're really going to go out of the way here. Our story time is going to be a page, well, 2 pages really, that I found lying in the street last week. We're just going to start from nothing. We're going to read the page, and then we're going to finish our story time for the day and see if there's anything amusing in. And I couldn't resist this when I picked it up literally out of the gutter. If you see, it's not Dostoevsky. It's not even Crime and Punishment. It's some sort of encyclopedic or dictionary entry about punishment and psychology of the school child. So much, much fun to come on the Dave's Gone By Facebookio, Podcastio, Programmio of the stream with me, Dave Lefkowitz. So here's the deal. So that's what was going to be happening. We probably won't have time for Grilly Crimes and Old Times. I apologize for that. And I don't know if Cynthia and Jeff have tuned in, but we're not going to do our Today Yesterday quiz either. Wow. Very sorry. That'll have to wait until next week. But by the way, welcome. Oh my God, all these people have been tuning in, including Dan and Anthony, of course, and Teresa and Sagar and Warhol. Oh yes, Warhol and Sagar, they tune in all the time. Erin and Jolinda. Oh, and Lou, to whom we will be speaking at 11 o'clock. So hang on for that. And John, of course, and Terry and Shirley and some other folks that I can't see. But welcome to everyone here in the Daverhood on Dave's Gone By. So we're going to try not to get too political for most of the show. This is not a political show usually, although as we ramp up to the elections in the months to come, it's going to be invariable because every week it's a clown car show. So, but I know I did mention Border People, which, as you can imagine, being an off Broadway show about people very often from foreign countries who are trying to come to America. Okay, there's certainly, understandably and deservedly, a left-wing tilt to that material. And there's generally a left-wing tilt to me. Now, if I go this way on camera, it's my right, but I think it's your left. Am I correct about that? I don't know. Anywho, left-wing tilt. It's stage. Non-stage, it's somewhere, it's going some direction. But gotta talk about, oh my God, and have I not been saying this week after week as someone who is unbearably sick of politics on both sides? And I have been saying this week, and more than ever this week. If you are a Democrat, as I kind of am, weren't you just embarrassed to get out of bed the other day? Wasn't it just the most ridiculous, awful, worst week ever? If you cared about where your tax money was going, that's for sure. Or if you just thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had two parties, both of which were ideologically different, but were fighting for the same things and could approach each other like rational, intelligent people who, whoever wins, whoever loses, one would help the other ultimately, and do what, I know it hasn't been like that in 20 or 30 years, but oh my gosh, the fracturing of the realpolitik this week. Yeah, I mean, it was one thing, we knew the impeachment was an incredible waste of time and money. We knew, and I've been saying that the impeachment was really more than anything else, it was payback for Clinton, not Hillary. It was payback for Bill. They put Bill through the ringer for getting a hum job, which was a joke and a terrible, ridiculous embarrassment and something that Republicans needed to be punished for. Took 25 years, and we tried to punish them for it. It didn't really work. well, Bill Clinton wasn't removed from office either. But here we go. There was the Chuck and Nancy and Tom Perez show. They knew, and Nancy knew going in, that nothing would happen with this. It would just be a big dog and pony show. Would have been nice if the Republicans had allowed some witnesses. If you have you can have a birthday without cake. I get that. There might be people with gluten issues. So you can't serve peanuts, no peanut butter. But you can still have a birthday party without cake. Kind of hard to have a trial without witnesses, don't you think? And at the same time, let's really, I mean, I know most of the people who are watching this program, most of the people who tune in week after week, and my New York friends and theater people friends are liberal, strong left-wing liberal. But let's really be honest here. Like, if the shoe were on the other foot and Hillary Clinton were president and she had talked to the Ukraine, and she had said, tried to tell someone, just in a conversation, one of the higher level people in the Ukraine, almost kind of in a joking way. Let's say Hillary was running for re-election against Joe Biden. And she would say, Joe's going to be a thorn in my side. He's saying bad things about me. Are his kids doing anything wrong over there in the Ukraine? Yeah, I'm not going to tie any money to it really, but wink, wink, we could loosen the purse strings a little quicker if you just, if there's dirt to be gotten. If there isn't, there isn't, but if there's some dirt to be gotten on this Biden kid, let me know. Now, if Hillary had done that, all right, and it's not as if, everybody loved or trusted Hillary. If we did, she would have been elected. So if she had done this, do you think that every single one of these Democrats who voted to impeach Donald Trump would have voted exactly the same way if she were in? Come on. And do you think that all the Republicans who voted to sort of look the other way on Donald Trump's indiscretions and tweets and verbal stuff and this Ukraine thing, do you think that every single one of them, to a man except Mitt Romney, would have said, oh, it's okay? No, you know it. Deep in your hearts, you know that half to 3/4 of the Republicans would have said, oh, how could Hillary do this and talk to the Ukrainians and make it a quid pro quo? She doesn't say it's an actual quid pro quo, but it really is a quid pro quo. How dare she? Let's get her out of office. Which is what they would have wanted to do since she was elected. But same token, and you, in your heart of hearts, you know this, that all these Democrats up and down the line would have said, politicians make deals. It's what they do. They're not just representing the country. They do have interpersonal relationships with these foreign leaders. Sometimes foreign leaders who are not the nicest people. Sometimes foreign leaders who are demagogues, right? And then you do, and as long as the world goes on, and then the economy's pretty good, blah, 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 right? So let's not all be on this incredibly moral high horse of, the Republicans blocked us from getting Trump out of office for doing this Ukraine thing. We wanted him out of office no matter what for 3+ years now. Ain't working. And unfortunately, I've been saying this, and I hate to echo Fox News, but the Democrats are basically 0 for this presidency, right? Again and again, they're 0 for everything. They wanted to get that possible rapist out of the Supreme Court, right? Couldn't prove anything, really. Something that might have maybe did when he was in college should or should not be held against him. They tried to get him on the stand, got him on the stand, tried to humiliate him a little, just make him matter, just make the Republicans matter, and boom, he's on the Supreme Court, right? And boom, Trump is nominating all these lower court Republican conservative judges for the 3 years he's been in. Haven't stopped him from doing any of that. Okay? Haven't stopped him from, they got that budget passed when there was the shutdown that we had a couple of times. 0 for this. 0 for that. This is the hysterical part. And I hate to say it, but it's true, that the Democrats for 3 years have been waiting for Donald Trump to implode because he seems so incompetent and so dumb and so ridiculous as president when he started. And he couldn't get the wall going, and he couldn't get this, and he spoke stupidly and tweeted stupidly. We don't have to do anything. Donald Trump's presidency will be over in a year because he'll do something so stupid and awful and dangerous that his own party will vote him out and we'll get Pence or something else will happen, right? So just like Trump be Trump, and he'll collapse everything. And then even I really thought that economies are cyclical. I mean, they are. But I thought, look, we've been riding a slow economic wave under Obama upward, right? Because George W. Bush was a horrible disaster. Obama came in and slowly but very surely, right, the economy turned around. The real estate market turned around. The markets were, not that the markets are really watched and legally anymore than they were, but everything slowly ramped back up again. And then when Trump came back in, all businesses thought he would be the bee's knees, and he came in with a surge, and the market just went on rocket fuel, as he put it. And I just sat back, and I'm sure all the Democrats sat back and said, give it a few months, right? This will run its course. They're excited by him. Then they'll realize He's just a millionaire for himself. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a con man, and the market will just plummet, aside from the fact that it had been 8 or 9 years. It's kind of every decade it goes through these cycles. It's due for a bad correction. We're due for a recession. And I was sure it would come about 8 months to a year and a half into Donald Trump's presidency. And while he did have a correction somewhere in the past 3 years, who remembers it? Right? That's the thing that's killing the Democrats. The economy did not implode, just the opposite. And you can make all the comments you want about income inequality. You don't want to know what I make a year, believe me. All the rich just getting richer while the middle class struggles more, for sure. But even though the jobs don't pay well, there are jobs out there in a way that they weren't under the last Republican president. So this idea that Trump himself would wreck his own presidency, which he could, from the whole Stormy Daniels stuff to all the firings and the revolving doors, didn't happen. Democrats just sat back and watched and waited for this to happen, and it didn't. And every time the Democrats tried to do something, they made a lot of noise. Oh, they made tons of speeches. Oh, and they ripped up pieces of paper. Oh, boy. Oh, Nancy's mad. Whoopee, right? When it came to actual getting something done, either to dislodge Trump or to brook him, to brook his power, to defang him or something, useless. No, and it happened again with this impeachment last week, as we saw. Republicans stopped everything. I don't know. Honestly, if I were voting, I don't know how I would. People are saying just what a moral, courageous man Mitt Romney was for doing what he did as a Republican and going against Donald Trump. Yes, if that was his personal belief. I don't know what my personal belief is. If I were in the Senate or in the House and I was a Democrat and looking at the evidence, it was just like hearsay phone calls about Ukraine, talking about stuff. I don't know if that is a removable, impeachable offense. I don't know if the only reason I would vote for impeachment is if Nancy Pelosi was strong-arming me to do so, rather than in my hearty heart of hearts. I'm saying, is this really so bad to remove Trump? Not to remove him because of some of the other things that he says or represents, right? Or because I'm pro-choice and he's not, right? Or because he did that horrible thing of not letting trans people in the military anymore. That wasn't on trial here. It was just this particular issue. Was it removable? I can't say whether I would vote specifically to say, oh, that was so awful. Got to impeach him, right? Unless I were caught up in this horrible, nonpartisan moment. So all of that was happening this week, right? And then that State of the Union speech with Trump up there taking a victory lap, right? Mostly being quite gracious about everything. And then, these State of the Union speeches, oh, here's a veteran who lost 3 eyes and a leg. And so let's all, easy stuff that everybody should applaud and acknowledge. But then, he, the double snub, if you will. These are school children, people. So Trump kind of understandably does not want to shake Nancy Pelosi's hand. He might have if she didn't go for the impeachment thing. But since she did, since she tried to remove him from office, you can kind of understand why Donald Trump would look at her like something he's scraping off his shoe. Right? So she offers her hand, very like, and he's like, pivots away from her. And she's like, I'll F you too. And in a move that like 6-year-olds do, she takes his speech, which apparently she had pre-torn a little beforehand. And so, nothing went my way. We didn't impeach you. We didn't get our witnesses in. We didn't get our person on the Supreme Court. We didn't. Shame on you. This is schoolyard behavior. Or actually, people don't spend their time in schoolyards ripping paper. First grade math behavior on both of their parts. What are we dealing with here? And I'm not saying that other countries are so much better, by the way. If you see the way they scream at each other in English Parliament, if you've seen in the Italian Parliament, they throw chairs and attack each other every once in a while. We are actually more civilized than that. Maybe we shouldn't be. maybe it should come to fisticuffs now and again. So there's all that going on, right? There's Nancy's big move now is to steal the spotlight for a moment by symbolically saying, all you're saying is a tissue of lies. Yeah, like all State of the Union addresses aren't biased in one complete direction and fudging the truth about how the economy and how the country is going in the first place. Of course it's lies. A lot of it. Right? Okay, so that's strike one. But in the same week, almost the same day, the Democrats have the opportunity to get their act together and show, okay, we've narrowed it. We had like 147 candidates to become president of the United States in 2020. We've narrowed it down. Okay, everyone was making fun of us that we had the clown car, this person, that person, this person, that person. We've got them down now to a little over half a dozen mostly legitimate contenders to the throne. Right? And we're gonna have our first caucus, whatever the hell a caucus is, in the middle of Iowa, because we all know as Iowa goes, so goes the country. Perfect state to start everything in. And they do the caucus, and I mean, you saw it. And what's funny is we've become so spoiled. Part of it is just is our being unbelievably spoiled by the modern age and modern technology. Because 80 years ago, if you had an election, right, 60 years ago, what would it, sort of, if it was a close call, you knew you weren't going to hear anything that day. Presidentially, Harry Truman went to sleep seeing a newspaper headline, I lost to Thomas E. Dewey. Crap. And then he wakes up, and that paper jumped the gun and took the embarrassment for it. But why did they have to jump the gun? Back in the day, you'd be, okay, they're going to meet, then they're going to have to type up some stuff and get some press releases done and some announcements, and we'll hear in a day or two what the results were. But now, of course, everybody jumps on Twitter, everybody jumps on Instagram and Facebook, and they want to know right now, right this second on TV, the 11 o'clock news, what happened. And so they got to be ready for it in a way that they never were. And suddenly this caucus people in Iowa is hanging Chads all over again. And I do feel bad for Chad. I think they should, unleash him and let him walk around a little bit. But how does this happen? We had 3.5 years to get ready for this important day. And it's like, and it was close. That, if it was a runaway, they could have said, yeah, we're sure it's so-and-so. The details, they're going to filter out over the next 24, 48 hours. But because apparently it was a Sanders-Buttigieg back and forth, it took a while, and there were discrepancies and oopsies and miscounts. And remember, the Democrats have to present themselves as people who are ready to govern if and when Donald Trump doesn't win in 2020. It's not just about the man or woman, but the man that they're electing in 2020 and his vice president. It's about the whole party that's going to change hands. And if this party can't get a caucus right, how are they supposed to get yada, yada, blah, blah, blue, right? So an extraordinary, embarrassing week for American politics on the whole. And I have to say, I hate to say, for the Democratic Party this week. Funny, really funny, if you look at it from another lens. If Michael Moore were making a documentary about this week and could keep his anger out of it, it'd be hysterical. But if it weren't so sad, if it weren't so, oh my God, what are we living in? What is going to happen to us, right? The Democrats really have one last thing, and that was the thing. We all were waiting. This was the upshot of what I've been talking about. We've been waiting for Donald Trump to implode his own presidency, for the economy to cycle out and crash, either through people realizing that he was some sort of con man, or the him picking the wrong people, or just because it's time for a recession and he just has the bad luck to be there when it happens. Either way, that's what we were waiting for. Didn't happen. Waiting for Trump to implode, waiting for him to make the big mistakes. Instead, all Donald Trump has to do for the next 9 months is just kind of go and wait for the Democrats to fall apart themselves. They're doing a fantastic job. Perez and Pelosi and Schumer, they're all just they're whining, crying, this is so terrible, and making speeches. And meanwhile, they are dropping like flies around him. And there's the big schism that they were trying to ignore back in 2015-16 between those who are really going to go left for Sanders, which is a core chunk of young people in the Democratic Party, and people who are a little worried that Sanders is too far left and that they might want someone more centrist like a Buttigieg or a Biden, who is suing, right? Isn't he suing the Democratic Party over the madness of the caucuses? What a cluster. And it does make me, still makes me really, really disheartened and dispirited that John Hickenlooper dropped out so early. I mean, he wasn't gaining traction, and he just wasn't finding his mojo for some reason. But he would have been a darn good candidate. Oh, well. And then there's Bloomberg, who's just waiting around the edges, man. And believe me, I wouldn't, as someone who has been a New Yorker for many, many years, not so much in Manhattan, except working, and Long Island, and seeing, when he took the reins, and did a damn good job. People don't like Bloomberg, nanny state. We could do a lot worse than Bloomberg. All right, I'm not going to give any. If one of his 4 zillion television ads decides to quote me, Dave Lefkowitz, from Dave's Gone By, and they're getting celebrities to endorse, which I'm sure they all will, and you'll see every 5 minutes on TV this Bloomberg commercial, and you see all these Democratic celebrities and actors and actresses and musicians, and then there's me. It's like, yeah, you could do a lot worse. That's my endorsement right there. And you know what? 80% of Americans would look at that and go, that's not a bad endorsement, all things considered. We don't want to do worse. Just a thought. Anyway, it's about, oh my gosh, it's almost 20 to 10 here, Eastern time in the Daverhood. You're watching Dave's Gone By with me, Dave. Thank you, by the way. We still have a lot of viewers and listeners, a lot of folks who could have turned off their computers and gone away while I was saying bad things about the Democratic Party, hung with me. So thank you for listening. And thank you to Elizabeth and George and Chris and Rick and Jay, of course, Jay, who's a friend of the Daverhood. Ellen, Cynthia, and Jeff, I do apologize. Cynthia and Jeff, don't tune out. But because we have two guests in the Daverhood today, we're not going to have our Today, Yesterday quiz. But I hope you're feeling much better. Because as you told all of us, you were rushed to the hospital last week, or the ER, and I'm hoping everything's good. Elizabeth and Giorgio and Warhol and Cigar and all the folks who tune in every week to this program, which, by the way, if you don't already know, and I'm sure you do, has a website called davesgoneby.com, DAVESGONEBY, davesgoneby.com. Now, this is the place, it's not just pictures of the show, and kind of letting you know who's going to be on upcoming shows and what's on this week. We've got all our archives there, going back to the very first episode that we did, 11 o'clock at night on October 6th, 2002, 57-minute show on Long Island radio, terrestrial radio. We saved it. We lost our second show. We got the third and the fourth and the fifth. I think we lost the seventh. But then virtually every show we have done since then, over the past 17 years, is saved and archived. For the first 15 years, they're all MP3s. They're downloadable. You stream them right on your computer if you're afraid of getting a coronavirus from your computer. Past 2.5, 3 years, of course, we've been doing them video as well, live on Facebook. Those are archived as both audio and video too. So anything you missed, if you missed last week's show, it's there. Right? And if you missed some of the wonderful interviews that we've had over the years, they're there too. You don't want to miss them. It's all at davesgoneby.com. And there's even a separate archive there of the interviews that we've done. So like today, God willing, the phones don't rise, we'll have Lou Liberatore, the actor, and of course Lonny Price, the actor and director. They will both be in the Daverhood today. So if for some reason you have to go and you can't hear both of them, because we're on from 9 until noon every Saturday here, well, scroll down in our Facebook page later during the week or forever until Facebook goes out of business, or go to davesgoneby.com. The archives will be there waiting for you. Anyway, it is now 20 to 10 in the morning Eastern time. Time to get a little bit theatrical, which we will certainly with Lonny Price and Lou Liberatore. But as I mentioned, I do love me some theater and have for many, many years, which is why I love to do a segment every week that tells you what's going on the stages of New York, and I like to call it Inside Broadway. Inside Broadway, a look at theater on and off Broadway and beyond. Brought to you by Total Theater and Performing Arts Insider. Curtain going up. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Inside Broadway we go every week here in the Daverhood. So if you're not a theater fan, I'm trying to make everyone theater fans, to make you love Broadway and live shows just as much as I do. And if you're not New Yorkers, the whole point is go to your local playhouse. I mean, if you're tuning in from Colorado, you've got the Denver Center and the place in Arvada, and you've got a couple of different places in Fort Collins to go to as well. Check it out, if you're watching from Connecticut, there's Hartford Stage. If you're watching from Los Angeles, you've got the Odyssey Theater and places like that, or the Geffen. You go. Just enjoying, and I try to transmit some of that excitement. Well, a lot of people are excited by the David Byrne Broadway concert show extravaganza. Well, it's not extravaganza, but it's certainly a very cool show, as I told you about a couple of weeks ago. It's called American Utopia, and people were so excited that they're throwing money at it. It recouped, which means that it is officially a hit. In Broadway terms, we think, oh, it's a hit. Anybody can throw that word around. Oh, it's a wonderful show. I saw it as a hit. What hit really means in legal Broadway terms and financial Broadway terms is that it made its money back. The folks who invested their money, the show is in the black. They got all their investment back, and now everything after that, assuming the show stays on track week after week for its operating expenses, the rest is gravy. The rest is profit to all the producers. So American Utopia, David Byrne's concert musical, let's call it that, just went in the black last week. It cost about $4 million to put on, because you see the costumes, they're really cool, and it's really very well choreographed. It's a neat show. And it is now officially a hit. Not only that, in the same week, you know how the Democrats had this terrible, terrible week? David Byrne had a wonderful week, because not only did his show, which is running just a couple more weeks on Broadway, not only did his show become an official hit, but Spike Lee is going to be directing a movie version of the live show for release later in the year. So the good news is, if you're not going to be able to get to see American Utopia live, you'll be able to tune in. I don't know if it'll be a cable thing or if it'll be a limited feature film release, but Spike Lee is going to take that on, as he did with like Passing Strange a few years ago. But, I'm as I said, if you're a David Byrne fan, if you're a Talking Heads fan, and you can get to New York, go see the show live. It's great to hear some of those songs in person, and some of Byrne's banter is kind of cool, and then just the way everything is, they're moving around and choreographed all together. It's pretty neat. Don't just wait to see it on TV or on a big screen. But anyway, one of the sad things about doing Inside Broadway every week is that usually we have to spend half the segment saying farewell to people because people drop dead. It's like when the Tonys and the Oscars had to take that 5 minutes out for the in memoriam segment. That was actually spoofed very, very funnily in Forbidden Broadway, now that they revived that at the York Theater. But we lost a couple of people this week on and off Broadway, and it's only right to say goodbye. First of all, farewell to an actor that I'm going to say the name. You won't know the name. If you saw a picture of him, you'll know who I'm talking about. But Kevin Conway passed away on February 5th at the age of 77. He was in a show that I have great fond memories of. Sorry for the bad grammar, but I have personal fond memories of this show. And I've probably mentioned them on the air before as well. But there was a comedy called Other People's Money that ran for maybe 2 or 3 years at the Minetta Lane Theater off Broadway in the Village. Other People's Money, very smart, very sharp, funny show. I think the author was Jerry Sterner. All about, and it was done in the height of this Reaganomics decade of things swallowing other things and spitting out what they don't need. So we have this character named Larry the Liquidator, who is this funny, lovable, voracious capitalist who come into places and basically take them over, see what wasn't necessary, and fire people right and left. That was his job. His job was to save the big bosses tons of money by streamlining and firing people. And if you think this is a 30-something-year-old idea that isn't relevant anymore, go check out the university where my wife works at the moment and see what they're thinking of doing with the administrative staff there. And then you'll see this is just same thing. Meet the old bosses, same as the new bosses. But anywho, I digress. So so he comes into town to take over this mom and pop business that has been successful but is struggling now. And then there's the daughter who's kind of learning to run the company from her father. And then she's tangling with Larry, but there's also a romantic interest perhaps. And it's really cool. They made a movie of it that I don't really remember with, I think, Danny DeVito and Penelope Ann Miller. But on stage, it went like wildfire. It was funny, but it was also, it hit you hard because that is the economics of America. And I liked the show so much, I gave it such a rave review, that they, on the billboard outside of the theater, of the Minetta Lane Theater on Minetta Lane, it's right near West 4th Street in Manhattan, they had these critics and their quotes. And this was the first time I really ever seen, and it is an ego thing, but like my name so prominently put with all these other critics and physically on a big sign outside a building. And you see this quote about the show, that quote about the show, this critic, that critic, and at the bottom, they saved mine for last. And it was just in quotes, see it with someone you're suing. A line I'm always going to be quite proud of. See it with someone you're suing. And David Lefkowitz, who was probably this month on stage. And I was so proud, and I shouldn't be proud because critics should not be swayed by that. We shouldn't be tempted to give quotable, cute lines or like shows even more than we really do, just in the hopes of being physically quoted in a newspaper and getting ink and getting our names out there. But in that case, I felt great. And then there was another, so I know I'm digressing, but there was another case of a show that I didn't like so much. I liked some of it. It was a musical review. And a couple of songs I was into and the rest was kind of boring. And then I wrote that one particular song was Foot Stompin'. And for the pull quote ad in the Times or Newsday, wherever it was, they had all these critics and their one-word reviews, supposedly, of the show. And they had my name, and in quotes the word foot stomping, as if I was livid. I called up and yelled at the press agent. I was like, how dare you? I said that about one song. Didn't you read the review? But technically, it was a true quote. I say in my review about this show, in some point, I used the word foot stomping. And that taught me that was a corrective lesson over the Other People's Money lesson of seeing my words up there. Is that I'm influencing people. People might see my sentence over there and my name, and see the magazine that I publish, and they might be influenced to see this show that I loved. Yay. So anyway, what does this have to do with anything? Well, one of the things that made that show go, finally I get to it, was Kevin Conway as the lead actor, as Larry the Liquidator. It was a marvelous role for him. He was so much fun to watch. And if you ever saw Other People's Money Off-Broadway, he was the guy. He was also a Drama Desk winner, kind of a bit before my theater-going time, for the play When You're Coming Back, Red Ryder, back in 1974. He made his Broadway debut in the play Indians by Arthur Coppett. He was also, speaking of Friends of the Daverhood, in Moon Children by Michael Weller. And he was not in the movie, because Anthony Hopkins was in the movie, but he was Frederick Treves in The Elephant Man on Broadway, the guy who, the nice doctor who takes the Elephant Man out of his milieu and turns him into someone who, the Elephant Man already was a human being, but treats him like one. So, and in kind of an underrated show, in 1995, they decided to do a stage version of On the Waterfront, not a musical, but just turn that into a play. And it's good material. It worked. The critics were like, oh, why do you have to put this on? The movie's perfect. Let it be. The movie is perfect, but they did it, and it was good. And Kevin Conway was in it. So he played the evil, mobby, kind of longshoreman boss, Johnny Friendly. So a farewell to Kevin Conway in the Daverhood. Passed away on February 5th, at the age of 77. Well, we also lost a couple of other people. Can't get around this one. As we all know, at the age of 103, and passing away of natural causes on February 5th, Isor Danielevich, nice Jewish boy from an impoverished Jewish family. Isor eventually became, and this is even before he went into acting, really. He changed his name to Kirk Douglas. And we lost Kirk Douglas this week, son of Russian immigrants. They spoke only Yiddish. The name of his autobiography was actually The Ragman's Son, because that was his dad's job, just picking up any kind of junk and schmutz or anything that he could possibly resell that he would find on the streets. And Douglas himself, before his acting career took off, had about 40 different day jobs just to get by. But he did wind up with a scholarship from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which is, by the way, when he met another nice Jewish girl named Betty Bacall. And Lauren would be, they dated a little bit, but she was much younger. He wasn't that into her, but she was very helpful to him in moving his career forward. And then he made his Broadway debut in a show called Spring Again, playing a Western Union boy. But then, of course, as it did for all men during that era, the military called. He joined the Navy in 1941. He was injured, by the way, doing a depth charge. I have no idea how that works. I guess it popped his ears or something. But sent home in 1944. And then he was in several Broadway shows through like the early to mid-40s. Well, not the early 40s, but the mid-40s, including, check this, he was in a 1946 flop comedy called Woman Bites Dog, that also starred E.G. Marshall. Not too shabby. But then Douglas's career started taking off. In 1946, Lauren Bacall got him some film work in a movie called The Strange Love of Martha Ivers. And then came The Champion, where playing to, in some ways, type, Kirk Douglas played a boxer, and he was Oscar nominated for that. And from then on, it worked tremendous amount, because if you come from that kind of background, you're always wondering when the next job's going to come. So he worked and worked and worked. We know him, of course, from Young Man with a Horn, the Billy Wilder movie Ace in the Hole, Detective Story. He got another Oscar nomination for The Bad and the Beautiful, which basically describes this program, doesn't it? And then he started his own production company. This is kind of, early in his career. He started a production company that was named after his mother, Bryna, or Bryna, Bryna. And that led to such movies as Paths of Glory, Spartacus, of course, 7 Days in May, Lust for Life, one of his most famous roles, where he played Vincent van Gogh. And he also did his last Broadway show, as a matter of fact, was a good one. It was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1963, and he had the rights to it, and he wanted to make it, couldn't get it made, and by the time he could, and his son got involved, Michael Douglas got involved to making it, Kirk was too old to play the role and went to some guy named Jack Nicholson. But still, Douglas acted and acted. He did like 7 movies with Burt Lancaster and a lot of shows in the 1970s. He did, I have no idea about this. I don't know if you can find this anywhere, but there's a TV musical version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that starred Kirk Douglas, if you can imagine. Okay, fabulous. And here's the deal. In 1996, Kirk Douglas suffered a terrible stroke. Couldn't act, couldn't move his mouth, couldn't do anything. Came back from that, mostly, to talk, to the point where in 2009, in the theater named after him in California, the Center Theater Group has a theater called the Kirk Douglas Theater. And he appeared there in a one-man show in 2009 called Before I Forget, an autobiographical look at his life. Why couldn't he have brought that to New York? I would have loved to have seen that, wouldn't you? And he was in his 90s at that point, post-stroke. Amazing. Personal life, of course, we know. His son, Michael Douglas, daughter-in-law is Catherine Zeta-Jones. He was married to a woman named Diana Dill in the early 1940s. It lasted about a decade. Met another woman, and he would spend the next 60 years with her. He wasn't always faithful, and she knew it. The wife dealt with it. She's like, okay, I get the man, I get the money. He can go do what he needs. If only all women felt like that. But yeah, Kirk Douglas, what a loss. One of those last ties to real old classic Hollywood. I know Olivia de Havilland is still out there, and there's still actors from the 60s and 70s and 80s, but we're losing the ones from the 40s, man. And Kirk Douglas, big farewell to him from Inside Broadway and the Daverhood. You know what? I want to, what shall I do? Because I have a bit more to do on this Inside Broadway segment, but we also have to get to our guests in the Daverhood. So why don't we get our guest going? And then I'll do like an Inside Broadway Part 2 a little bit later in the show, because I do want to review the Dan Hoyle show, Border People, and we did lose somebody else in theater this week, and I don't want to let that go unspoken. And so welcome to Claudia and Robert and Tom and Bruce and Frank and all the folks tuning in to Dave's Gone By today, February 8th, 2020. I'm Dave Lefkowitz. This is the Dave's Gone By Facebookio Podcastio Programmio of the stream that airs every Saturday from 9 until noon or thereabouts Eastern Time. All our information and our archives is at davesgoneby.com. My email is davesgoneby@aol.com. My Twitter feed is RadioDave2, RadioDave the number 2. And the next person who's going to be here, his name is Rabbi Sal Solomon. He's got a website as well, shalomdammit.com. Now, Rabbi Sal has a very important task. He is going to be talking with Lonny Price, the actor, the director. We're very excited about this. So what I need to do is bring Rabbi Sal. He's in the next room. I got to go get him. Let me play our outro theme for Inside Broadway. And the next voice you hear will be very, very Jewish.
It's the famous gay white way where the night is bright as day. Ain't Broadway grand?
It's not just a thoroughfare, it's a tingle in the air. Ain't Broadway grand?
It's excitement, it's romance, it's all fun and song and dance. This wonderland. You can be a millionaire quicker here than anywhere. Ain't Broadway grand?
You audition very well, you're in great form, you can tell. Ain't Broadway grand? As you do your flash and tape, we'll call you is all they say. Ain't Broadway
Shalom, my friends. Ain't Broadway grand indeed? It certainly is. And for me, Broadway is also Grand Street. I being Rabbi Sal Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. Oh, and I'm mangling my words because I'm so excited about the guest that we have in the Daverhood today. This is a man. You want to talk about theater. You want to talk about Broadway and musicals. He is currently directing a musical in Canada that has aspirations to go far beyond Canada, because, you know, who doesn't? But it's called The Louder We Get, being done at Theatre Calgary. But Americans and Broadway people know him from being in the original Merrily We Roll Along on Broadway. He was also the original Master Harold in Master Harold and the Boys. He directed a bunch of shows at, and I say this with great nachas, the American Jewish Theater. He's directed a ton of Sondheim shows in concert and elsewhere. He is an Emmy winner for directing the Stephen Sondheim TV concert. And most of all, he did a Broadway show that he wrote and also appeared in called A Class Act. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a class act indeed, the one, the only, the Jewish Lonny Price. Shalom, Lonny.
Shalom to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, and thank you so much for joining us on this Shabbos morning. So before anything else, tell us how this new musical that you are directing, The Louder We Get, is going out in Calgary.
Oh, it's going splendidly well. I've got smashing reviews, and the audiences are loving it. And so, yeah, we're very excited about it and looking forward to its next step.
Well, tell us about the show itself. To me, it sounds a little bit like The Prom that was done on Broadway last season.
Well, it is similar only in the fact that, I mean, The Prom last season was really about a bunch of kind of Broadway people who go to try to get some publicity by helping the cause of getting a girl to be able to take another girl to the prom. But this is a true story of a man named Mark Hall, who in 2002 sued the Catholic school board to take his boyfriend to the prom and won. And so this is really about kid empowerment. It's about getting kids to stand up for what they believe in and fight the system. And, you know, it's very much like Greta with climate change. And, you know, I think a lot of our generation has failed the young people of the world, and they're going to have to, and they are, start standing up for themselves and making change happen in a way to better the world and, you know, gun control and all kinds of things. So it's really about kid empowerment, and it's also about the true story of Mark Hall.
Well, can I ask you a strange question, but do you think that theater and movies and art and entertainment can change the world, or is it really just a distraction that plays to, like, they're already converted?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I think for instance, in Calgary, just this week, they were voting on conversion therapy, which is, of course, trying to reprogram or, I don't even know, renature someone's homosexuality into being heterosexual by, you know, means of electroshock therapy and all kinds of things. And they saw the show. A lot of the people on the board saw the show and, in fact, wore the T-shirt of the show at the hearing. And they did, in fact, ban conversion therapy in Calgary. Now, the idea that that's even a question these days is amazing, but it is. So I do think theater can, I think it actually can change some people's minds. And if not change them completely, soften them into maybe having, being open to listen to another point of view. So I hope so. That's what we're all doing it for, is that we would make a bit of a difference here.
All I know is sometimes I've had to help Goyim convert to Judaism, and that sent me into therapy, let me tell you. That's a little comedy right there. Little humor, little Jewish comedy. But was it tough for you coming out, because you've been an openly gay person for a long time? Did you have issues either with your family or with, I mean, you're in the New York theater community, so it should be pretty open there, but I don't know. How was it for you?
It wasn't easy for me. I just thought it was just internally I didn't want to be gay. I wanted to have a family. And when I was coming out, when I was younger, the idea of two men ever having children, ever being able to adopt children was unthinkable. So anyway, I think I wanted to be quote unquote normal and all those things. So I don't know if, I think particularly in my generation, I don't know that it's easy it was easy for any man to come out or woman. What's wonderful is to see how much that has changed in, many parts of the country and the world, though not all, where people are much more free about that and are much more accepting. I think the great news is that the new generation now, people in their 20s and under, they don't see sexuality or sexual preference as a barrier to anything. The cast we have up there in Canada is gay and straight, and at the end of the play, they're all dancing with each other without any kind of reticence, just with joy. And I think they're all young, and I think that there's been a real shift, and it's a wonderful thing to see, considering all the not such good things that have happened in the world. I think this is we're certainly in the right direction when it comes to acceptance of homosexuality.
Well,
anyway, that's my thought.
But it's one thing to come out to your family as a gay person, but it's quite another to tell your family, Mom, Dad, oi, I want to be an actor. That's when the head goes in the oven. When did you realize this is what you wanted to do? You wanted to be in the theater and the creative arts?
Well, honestly, to tell you the truth, I didn't have that problem because my parents loved the arts. And I think, well, my mother was a bit of a frustrated actress, and my father was a trumpet player, and they took us to the theater all the time. I saw my first show when I was 4. I saw Oliver on Broadway when I was 4. So we had been going to the theater very regularly. And I actually am, no one ever said be a doctor or a lawyer. We actually were very happy that I wanted to be an actor. I know that's insane, but that's just kind of how it happened in my story. There was no, in any way, opposition, honestly, to it at all. So I got lucky in that way.
Well, do you remember your audition for Merrily We Roll Along for a couple of people named Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim? I know you did a documentary about the musical and what happened there, but do you remember walking in and what you did because you got the part?
Yeah, I do. I did a 40s song called Everything Happens to Me, sort of like a big band song. And then I did a Rodgers and Hart song called I Wish I Were in Love Again. So I actually remember it quite well and read a few scenes. And it was an enormously exciting day. And I was told later that day that I got the part, which was, a tremendous high. And as you mentioned, the documentary called Best Worst Thing chronicles that experience.
Right. Now, people have to see that if you're a theater person, if you're a Sondheim person, you have to go see the documentary. But since we have you here with us, we'd love to recount what happened with the show. I mean, you've got a show by the most important theatrical composer of the century and the greatest producer-director, maybe, that we've had over the century. They get together, they've had success beforehand, and then it just Merrily We Roll Along. They couldn't, was it just that Hal Prince couldn't find a handle on the proper way to tell the story, and then like the t-shirts was a signal?
I think it's a complicated story. I think doing it backwards, as you know, it goes back in time. So each scene forward is a scene backwards. So we start, at that point in 1981, and then the last scene was in the 50s. I think that was tricky for an audience. I think that the kids playing adults was tricky for them. They've worked on it since Sondheim and George First when he was alive, and it's gotten a lot better. So I think it was, I don't think the material was in as good shape as it wound up being. And we didn't go out of town, so that was, which was unusual in those days. So we usually take a musical. They used to do it, they don't so much anymore. We would play a couple of cities and work on it. So we do that, in previews, and the word of mouth in the beginning was not good. And so I think we were sort of an easy target. Also, they had just come off Sweeney Todd, which was sort of such a crowning achievement. And I think people in general like to bring down people that they build up, little Sheldon Florida. And so I think a lot of things that contributed to its lack of success the first time out. But since it is, been done a million times, and there's a film that's being done of it, and so it's had quite a very happy afterlife, even if it didn't succeed that original production in 1981.
And one of the nice things about the film is that even though it was a negative experience overall, it was a flop musical. Everybody's very clear that you young kids who are appearing in this Broadway show the first time, Hal Prince and son were very protective of you guys. They knew that things were going wrong. They knew the critics didn't like it, blah, blah, blah. But at least, they tried to keep you guys sort of coddled a little bit. True?
I think that's very true. They were wonderful to us and never made it feel like it was our fault. And, they couldn't have been more protective. You're absolutely right. They were, like wonderful uncles who loved you and wanted to protect you. So, one of them still is, and Hal just died a few months ago. Yeah. Extraordinary man. And
do you know?
Heroes to me.
Do you know? I know they never worked together again, but did they make up? Did they at least become friendly acquaintances again? Because that's the saddest part of the thing is that it severed their partnership as creatives together.
Yes, no, I think they were friends way before that. They've been friends since the 50s and 40s. They met on the opening night of South Pacific, and I don't know, was that 1944 or something like that? And they were dear friends and remained so throughout Hal's life, and up to a couple months ago when he died. So I think the friendship did not suffer for the theatrical,
good.
Unfortunate show that didn't succeed.
Now, speaking of a show that was fortunate and did succeed, you were in the original Broadway incarnation of Master Harold and the Boys, a great play by Athol Fugard. Do you have any stories about him? I mean, the man came from South Africa. He was white South African, but he came from that milieu, is writing about it. Do you have any memories of being in Master Harold?
Oh, yeah, I mean, a lot of them. I learned the part in, I think, 9 days because the person that was supposed to do it got a film and backed out. And so it was just incredibly quick. And Athol was the director and, really held my hand. And it's an autobiographical story. So he was telling his story of himself as a young man. So he was the best, research possible to have on that. And it was an amazing experience. And it's 90 minutes. And, the kid that I play goes through kind of an emotional breakdown. He actually spits at one of the two waiters in his mother's tea room, who's a black man, who's really his father, his father figure, and severs the one good relationship he ever had in the world. So it's a very emotional and emotionally draining play to do. I did it for 10 months, and it was a lot. It was emotionally draining just to do it every night. But I was grateful because it's such an extraordinary piece of work, and it was the same year I did Gnarly, so I did Gnarly in the fall later that season. Yeah,
that's a good year.
A huge year for me as an actor, as a young actor, to get a great part in a Sondheim musical, and then the lead role in an Athol's play.
But here's the question for a young actor, for someone who is on the way up, is excited about this, is on Broadway in 2 different shows, a musical, a play, everything's doing great, and yet at the same time, when they make the TV broadcast of Master Harold and the Boys, Zakes Mokai is there, and they've got Matthew Broderick in your role. I mean, do you see that? How do you see that? And then not show up at Matthew Broderick's house with a gun?
Well, at the time it was very painful. And ultimately I've become friends with Matthew, and I like him a lot. It certainly wasn't his fault. Looking back on it, of course, Matthew was the draw. Matthew was and is a big movie star, and I'm sure the way it got made was that they could get Matthew to play it. But it's terrible. It's a horrible, horrible feeling, and but you have to get over that. I mean, being an actor is, it ain't for sissies. You gotta toughen up, and you get rejected every day. It's part of why I gave it up. I just found it too painful to have so little control in your life, because basically you're at the mercy of so many other people's fantasies about what they want, and as much as you want to do something, you have no control. So it's a very tough business to be an actor. I think they have it the hardest. So my sympathy and empathy for them is boundless.
And this leads,
it's hard.
This leads to the next question, which is, so at some point you realized you're knocking your head against the wall a lot as an actor, or they're giving you hard knocks. Hey, why don't I direct? And you said that directing was very freeing for you, and you just took to it, yes?
Oh, yeah. It was and remains a much better environment. You get to use your brain in a very different way. You're not just working on one character; you're working on all the characters, and the set, and the lights, and the music, and staging, obviously. And I found it much less, in a weird way, much less stressful. You really have much more responsibility, and it was freeing to be able to, as an actor, you were very much limited by your physicality. When I was younger, I was playing South Africans and Americans and East London hoodlums, but when you get older, and my hair started to fall out, and I was really just they just wanted to cast me as sort of the Jewish accountant, and that's pretty limiting for someone who wants to play a lot of different kinds of roles. But I'm 5'7", 5'6", and have a very one would say a Jewish ethnic kind of face and manner.
That is not a bad thing. All these things you're saying are wonderful things.
That's all. I didn't say it was a pejorative. It's just what it is. I don't mean it's a bad thing at all. Not at all. But anyway, it limits you to your physicality, limits you to how people are viewing you in terms of casting. And when you're a director, you have no limitation. It doesn't matter what you look like, or you're not too short, too fat, too bald, too whatever. You can be anything. So that is, but not actually as much now, because now people want very much the ethnicity of the playwright to be reflected in the director. It's I don't think you'll ever see a production of A Raisin in the Sun directed by a white man ever again. I just think that time is over. People want the culture that the play is set in and reflects to be directed by a person of that culture. So we're at a different time now, but when I was a director, you could do anything, which was when I first started, which was very nice.
Now, one of the things is, you mentioned before, the great musical Sweeney Todd. You also directed Passion. Some people might say that you make Sondheim something of a specialty. You've directed a number of his shows. Is there a special key? Is there a certain something about his work that you lock into, or that you would recommend to anybody who's going to be directing a Sondheim musical?
Well, I went to the first Sondheim show I saw was Company. On the occasion of my 11th birthday, which was very inappropriate. Some ticket broker told my mother that new show had opened that was supposed to be great for kids, which is hilarious. Company. And my grandmother and I. Yeah,
it's the little things you do together. Yeah.
With my grandmother and I went to see Company, and the sound of the music was just absolutely thrilling to me. It was, finding, not to say it was like finding God, because that would be sacrilege, but it was enormously powerful to me, and remains so. And so the reason I direct so much of his work is I just love it, and any opportunity to do it, I jump at. because it's, I think, the smartest and most interesting, most complicated, and most beautiful of writers. I just think he is just, heads and shoulders over everybody else. And I just adore his work, and anytime I can be in a room with it, I'm happy. So I've, luckily for me, spent a lot of my life in rooms working on his shows and interpreting them in whatever way I felt was correct.
How much opportunity have you had to actually meet and converse with him, if any?
Oh, I've known him
in adult years.
I wrote him a letter when I was 14, and we've been friends since that time. So that's over 40 years ago.
Mm.
So I've known him almost my whole life, and so we have a wonderful email correspondence. I just directed an evening of his for the Philharmonic of his orchestral work New Year's Eve, and we were on the phone during the day and working on Bernadette Peters' dialogue, her little interstitial comments to introduce the musical numbers, musical suites and overtures. So when I'm doing his work, I'm also usually doing it at fairly high-profile places, Philharmonic or the English National Opera, or where he's involved. It's not like we're doing it in Cleveland.
Nothing against Cleveland, but still, it's Cleveland. Yeah, got it.
No, Steve, it's not like it's like one of someone in a subscription series where they're doing, Amadeus, for this 3 weeks, and then they're doing a little light music for that 3 weeks. It's usually productions that he, I think, needs to have his eye on because of the amount of people and the exposure that these particular events have. And I welcome it. He's a genius, and his input is valuable to me. And even when I film things, I always send of his. I send him rough copies, and he gives me notes. And he's a wonderful film editor on top of all that. So he's, I often think if he were to devote his life to curing cancer, it'd be cured. He's just a brilliant man. He just happened to choose the theater.
Well, can I ask, since you are, without telling tales out of school, can I ask a couple of quick questions? Since you are at least email acquaintance and friends, first of all, why for 20 years have we not, since Bounce, have we not had anything? What happened to the Bunwell show that apparently died? What happened? Is it writer's block, or he's afraid of, just going through a whole process of a new musical again? What's he doing?
Well, I think he is writing, and I know he was working on the Brunel piece for a long time. I think he's maybe even working on something else. I don't know, you'd have to ask him.
I'd love to, but, if you can get him on the show, I will gladly have him on the program, believe me. Well,
I think part of it is it's probably very hard to, everything you write has to be not only good, but the greatest thing that ever happened because of his reputation. And I'm sure that's a tremendous burden when he picks up a pen, that he's the acknowledged, Shakespeare of our time. And so you can't just write a kind of nice little show. It has to be earth-changing, and earth-shaking. And I bet that's really hard for him.
Well, maybe you could convince him otherwise. Maybe you could, as a friend, could tell him, you know what? It doesn't have to be the greatest thing since sliced challah. It could be just a nice, sweet, little, amusing show with your little trademark stuff. It doesn't have to be the next Sweeney, the next West Side Story, the next this, that. By the way, have you seen the West Side Story? If you have, what do you think of it?
I haven't yet seen it. I'm looking forward to it, so I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, I'm just curious. Well, by the way, I should mention that we've been talking to Lonny Price, who is directing a musical up in Canada, which hopefully we will get here eventually soon, called The Louder We Get. It's at Theatre Calgary, and as he's been saying, he directs shows all over the place at the London Philharmonic. He does these big concert shows. You also did directing a musical for the Roundabout Theatre just a few months ago called Scotland, PA. How did that go? Was that a lot of fun? Was it a comedy? How did that go?
Oh, it was great. It was great, and we're actually still working on it, and I think we're going to be taking it to a couple of cities next year. It's a wonderful. I love this show. It's loosely. Well, it's not. It's if you just think of Macbeth at McDonald's being the kingdom. It's a very funny, hilarious rock musical play. Adam Guan, who wrote the music and lyrics, and Michael Mitnick, who wrote the book. And it's just wonderfully irreverent and funny, and not unlike Little Shop of Horrors, kind of. And so I had a blast doing it, and it was just a wonderful time. So I'm looking forward to us getting to the room. We actually have some meetings next week, and we're doing more revisions on it for the next outing. So yes, thank you for asking. It was a great one. I love that one.
Oh yeah. Now let's get to some famous people. If you have anecdotes, funny anecdotes, cute anecdotes, because I mean, having done what you have done and directed where you have directed, you know pretty much everybody in the business. For example, a couple of times you have directed Audra McDonald, who was just, she had to buy a new house just to put all the Tonys in there. What is she like? Tell me a funny Audra McDonald story.
A funny story about Audra. Well, I mean, one thing I'll tell you is that she hates bowing. She would really prefer that the lights go out and she go to her dressing room and go home.
Huh.
So the hardest thing to do is get her to take, a star bow. And she, and I always just say, okay, this is it. You're going to do it. I don't want to hear about it. And we've been really, really, she's one of my best friends for 15 years. So I can talk to her like that. She is, it's not that there are funny stories about her, but what she is everything you'd hope she'd be. Mm. She's smart and she is funny, and she's just this great woman. She's got incredible dignity and class, and she's just great. What she is an amazing mother. I mean, I think that one of her greatest talents that is unseen by the public is that it's all about the kids. And she, I think, would almost give all the rest of this up. And if she had to,
I hope not.
Choice and just be a mom. She's just a fantastic mother. Her first priority of those children. And the kids are astonishing. They're just wonderful girls. And it's no wonder because her attention is very much on them at all times. I love working with Audra. We constantly look for things to do together, and we've got a play we're going to do a reading of in a couple of weeks and see if it works. And I want to work with her all the time. I just think she's one of the great talents of all time. She's terrific.
I should have mentioned that you directed her in both 110 in the Shade and Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. Just so people have a little context there of what you guys did together on Broadway. Tell us, maybe not a funny story, maybe the opposite. Tell us something serious about Joan Rivers, because you worked with her on the Sally Mars show on Broadway. So tell us a Joan Rivers story, please.
Oh, Joan was hilarious at all times, and we worked on a play together for a couple of years, and I wound up co-writing it with her and directing it, and she was just hilarious. I mean, she was also, for instance, there was music in the show, and we went to her home. Her apartment was Amy Simple McPherson's ballroom. It was across the street from the Pierre. It was very ornate and a lot of gold leaf, and it was gorgeous. I mean, Joan lived like a society lady. I mean, a butler and a maid, and a butler, not just he was Kevin. Yeah, he was a butler in white and brings sandwiches on silver trays, and always addressed as Mrs. Rosenberg, never as Miss Rivers.
Wow.
Anyway, so a friend of mine, the musical director, Tim Weil, was on her piano, was playing her piano as a grand, and we set Steinway on it, and he said, "Joan, it's gorgeous, Steinway piano," and she said, "Actually, it's a Yamaha. I just had to paint Steinway on it so it would look better." And that was Joan. Not only did she do it.
Oh, that was true. It wasn't just a joke. Wow.
No, she didn't just, but also that, you know, if you're going to do that, why reveal that it isn't? But she was like that. She, the living room had enormous amount of gold leaf. It was blinding.
Oh my
And
God.
I said, what would Edgar think of this room? And she said, oh, he think it was a bit much. She was very self-aware about who she was, and she was very generous and kind to me. I have to tell you that. She treated me like gold, and I miss her. She was an amazing woman and a pioneer, and I was lucky to get to be with her for the time we shared, for sure.
Now, we have one more diva question before I get to the producer of this program, Dave, is really looking forward to talking about one particular musical that you're involved in. But we also have to mention the recent, fairly recent revival of Sunset Boulevard with Glenn Close. Tell us a Glenn story, please. Funny, not funny, whatever. Glenn Close.
Glenn, when we were talking about doing this revival of Sunset Boulevard, and I met with Glenn in the Village for lunch, and you know, I didn't have any. I mean, doing revivals is one thing, but doing them with the original star, you know, you kind of want to know what their expectation is, and she, you know, I said, are you willing to look at this freshly, this character? And she said, absolutely. She said, let's just start again. And so that was very brave of her and very exciting for me. So we were able to create something that wasn't just a carbon copy of what she had done in 1991 or whatever the original production was. So she's an amazing. By the way, every one of these so-called divas, there's not a single one that doesn't work their tail off. They are prepared. They're there later than everybody else. They kill themselves. So it's never these people waltz on the stage, not giving 300% and trying to be as great as they can be. Not any one of them that I've ever worked with. And Glenn is certainly that. Glenn worked till she dropped. She cast loved her. She's a wonderful leader of a cast. Trying to think of any kind of specifics. Oh, well, here's a fun story about Glenn. So this production started at the English National Opera, and it was a 5-week run, or whatever. I think about 5 weeks. We didn't have a lot of money for props, and we were looking at the beginning of the show. There's a monkey funeral, because what good musical doesn't start with a monkey funeral?
Agreed. Most of my sermons begin with that too. Yeah.
So we couldn't find the monkey, and I was talking to Glenn, and I said, how's it going? We're preparing it. So it's fine. I said, we're trying to find a monkey. Hilariously enough, we're having trouble finding a prop monkey. And there was a long silence, and she said, I have the monkey. She had the original monkey. She had all the props, not all of them, but many of them. And so she gave us the monkey. So who would have thought that Glenn Close would have kept the monkey from the original production? So I thought that was pretty.
That's cute. That's wonderful. We're talking with Lonny Price here in the Daverhood. And actually, I do. What? What's the matter? What?
Oh, that's my dog. I apologize.
Hello, dog. How you doing? So
he'll calm down.
We're talking with Lonny Price and his dog on the. Now, here's a question, and I would love for you to answer it. If you're not comfortable naming a name, that's totally fine. But are there people, now that you've been directing for so many years, that you will never work with again, that were just such divas in a bad way or so horrible, male or female? And if you want to name a name, or especially if they're dead, go ahead, or just somebody there that they know who they are and you know who they are, and never again.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, there are people that are never again that are not stars. That are just one thing I think that gets me that I'm not a fan of is anyone who's lazy and doesn't work hard and doesn't take it seriously, and those are people that I would never work with again. But there are a couple of people, and I don't really think naming names is useful, that were just troubled. mostly, when that's due to alcoholism, and, the people have struggles, and they bring them to work, and then that becomes very difficult for everybody else. But in general, I have to say, honestly, Rabbi Saul, I have had very few bad experiences with actors, and I think some of that is that I was an actor myself, and so I'm able to, I understand them and try and support them as best I can, and in general, they usually are amazing.
Now, you weren't, oh, sorry.
How many bad ones, yeah.
You weren't planning necessarily to do much acting again. You just wanted to do this musical about Ed Kleban, the lyricist for A Chorus Line, one of the most important musicals of the past 50, 60 years or so, right? And so you started working on this show about his life. And, well, first of all, what made you tackle that material to create a class act?
Well, funny enough, I actually wasn't supposed to be in it.
Right.
I was supposed to be in it, got a TV series, and sort of walked out on it, so I kind of came in at the end. But a friend of mine, Grant Storiali, had known Linda Klein, which was Ed Kleban's unmarried widow.
Wait, you're breaking up. Can you repeat? I heard you mention Grant Storiali, but I didn't hear anything else in that sentence. Yeah.
I'm sorry. He was a friend of Ed Kleban's unmarried widow, Linda Klein, who had all of Ed's songs that were left to her by him. And he said that she was looking to do a review and had seen the Joan Rivers show, oddly enough, which I don't know why she made that connection, that I would be a good director for that. So we met, and his songs were amazing to me. They were, he was an extraordinary lyricist, and he had written music, which was his big passion in life, was to be a composer, but none of the shows had ever been finished or produced, largely because he was very problematic. He was very crazy. He was in and out of institutions, and he was just a very sadly troubled man. But anyway, the songs all, even though they were from different shows from different periods, had a unifying sound, which was sort of like an urban New York, early 70s, late 60s kind of patina or something. So it occurred to me that they could be made into a story, unlike, say, Stephen Sondheim, where Pacific Overtures doesn't sound like Sweeney Todd, which doesn't sound like Merrily. I mean, all of them, though you could probably tell Steve's style, the sound of that music is very particular to Steve's, much more chameleon-like, and writes to the project and the period and the situation of the culture and all that. Whereas Ed really kind of wrote urban New York-y, kind of hip-sounding kind of songs. And I don't know how to do reviews. I like stories. I like narratives. So I suggested that maybe we could weave these songs into a musical that would be about his life, because his life was pretty colorful. He was, very troubled, and never got any of his music to be heard, which was a shame. So he had sort of a little bit of I wouldn't say tragedy, that's putting it too big, but a huge disappointment in his life was that his music was not celebrated or even heard by anybody, So anyway, we embarked upon that, and 7 years later, we had a class act, and then I wound up being in it because this guy left, and that's really the gestation of that one. Well,
the thing about a class act is Dave, who produces this program, absolutely loved that show. He found it, the songs were great, the story, it was a very moving show. It's one of the gems, he feels, of the past couple of decades.
I appreciate that. Please, if he's listening or he's in the studio, I'm very grateful. It's one of my favorites.
But the thing is, it was not, it's like Merrily. It didn't really take off at the box office. It ran a couple of months. It got how do you feel? I mean, here's a show that is close. I think by 7 years, it would have been close to your heart, that you poured your song. You knew was good. You knew that, this is not a case of a mediocre show that some people like, some and the critics hang a blah, and people don't come. This was a fine show. How do you justify? How do you then go, where are the people? Where are the crowds? Where are the reviews? How do you get through it night after night?
Well, I mean, in some ways, we did at the Manhattan Theater Club where it was very successful for 5 or 6 weeks, and then we moved it to Broadway where it ran 3 or 4 months and, just limped along.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, look, today no one would have moved that show to Broadway. I mean, it had no stars. It had, not a name composer in terms of Elton John or any of that.
Yeah.
It was a story about a writer. It didn't have a lot of universal appeal. I think stories about writers and painters and artists are a little tricky because I think the general public, their problems are very different and they're not very universal. So Ed's big tragedy in his life, as I was saying, was he didn't get his music heard. Well, here he was, the lyricist of a chorus line, very wealthy by most people's standards, a huge hit on Broadway, and oh, poor Ed, he didn't get his music heard. I don't think a general audience thinks that's that much of a problem or something that they can relate to, particularly. So I think the story was not, universally understood or appreciated because it really, when you think of people with real problems, that's not really a big problem.
Can I ask you, Lonny, at the time that you guys were doing a class act, Marvin Hamlish was still alive. Did he see the show?
Yeah.
Did he give you any input? Did he review the show for you? And
he wrote the opening song.
Yeah.
He wrote the counter to the opening song for us with versus Craig Cornelia.
Yeah.
And he didn't. I don't think he ever did see the show. He was being portrayed, and I think his friends told him that it wasn't, or maybe he was afraid to look at it as a flattering portrayal of him. But I will say that he never once said to me, "Don't do that," or "Why are you doing that?" or "I wish you wouldn't." He was generous. He loved Ed, and he was a generous supporter of the show. Though honestly, I don't think he saw it. I don't think he did see it. And I don't think, and we certainly, nothing in it I think would have offended him. But, we did portray him as, as he was, and maybe he didn't want to look at that. And I don't know. I really don't know. But Marvin was a wonderful man and very supportive of that show.
Okay.
So, I got,
Now we do want to mention that I think in a couple of weeks, theater company off Broadway is going to be reviving a class act.
That's right.
Is it
That's
J2
right.
or who's doing that? Do you know? You obviously know.
It's a brand new company, and it's being directed, I think, produced by a guy named Rob Schneider, who was an old assistant of mine, who assisted me on some of the TV things that I've done, and he's a great director, and I'm delighted that they're doing it. It hasn't been seen in New York, and since 2001. So it'll be, its 20th anniversary or 19-year anniversary. So it's lovely that they're doing it again. I'm delighted.
Now, we've been delighted speaking with Lonny Price in the Daverhood, and we're telling everybody, hey, go up to Canada, if they're letting us through the borders still. Go see this show that he's directing, The Louder We Get, at Theatre Calgary, which, you don't have to mention names again, but are any New York producers popping up to Canada to take a gander at this point? Or
Well, there are. We're trying to get as many as we can in the next 2 weeks. So if you're a New York producer and you're listening, it's a wonderful show and an audience show that I think is going to have a great future life. So I hope as many come as possible.
Now, here's the deal. You are a director, still occasionally an actor. You must have, like the rest of your calendar for the year, kind of filled. What else are we going to be seeing from you in 2020, 2021, Lonny Price?
Well, the next the next big favor, big-ish thing is I'm directing a musical of the movie Beaches in London in the fall. So basically, I'm going to be in prep for that from now on. So that's kind of the next one.
That's huge. Has it cast yet? Do they know who's in it?
We are. It is not cast yet, but I'm very much hoping that people who have done it already will do it again. but we are not signed, sealed, and delivered on the cast yet.
Fair enough. That's fair. So my last question then for the delightful Lonny Price, and I have to go here because, you are talking to a rabbi, as it were. How Jewish are you in the sense of your upbringing? And even at this point, do you still celebrate anything or a lot or what?
Well, my grandmother lived with us and raised me, I think. My mom worked, and so I didn't see much of her, and it was very important to her. We were not kosher, but we didn't have, bacon, pork in the house. We were sort of very modified in that way. But when she'd go on vacation, we'd eat pork chops, that kind of thing. So we were doing a lot of that, I guess, for her. I was bar mitzvah. My father's 94. Excuse me.
Wait, your daddy's still alive? Mit Mazel McGlick. Hello, Mr. Price. Yes.
Yeah, he's 94. And it's a great comfort and solace to him. When my mother died, he spent a lot of time in temple. He, until recently, would just go and sit in temple for a few hours and commune and feel at home. So it's been a very important part of his life. As for me, I'm not a religious person, and to tell you the truth, I feel a little, I don't know if guilty is the word, but to just show up for the high holidays feels a little insulting to the people who are there all the time and who make this their life and are very devoted. So to kind of just show up for the hit days, I've always felt a little bit like that was a little disrespectful anyway.
Well, that's why you understand. This is how we work it out. This is why the big temples make you pay $300 for good seats on holy days. You assuage the guilt by saying, "All right, I know you feel guilty. Give us $300. Absolution, come sit, and then be bored for 4 hours." So that's the trade-off. That's why they make you pay. I'm just.
I don't think that $300 assuages my guilt somehow. So I go on occasion and say there. So the truth is not very much, Rabbi Saul.
Oh, but you are a spiritual person, I would gather.
Yeah, frankly, I'm very interested in Buddhism, and I study that, and that's something to me that and Stoicism, actually. Those are the two philosophies that I'm more adhere to at this point in my life than Judaism.
Well, by the way, and I couldn't find this anywhere, but I'm curious. One of the first things that you mentioned in our conversation is this idea of where gay people are in our current culture, where they couldn't have even been 20 years ago. And you mentioned children. Do you have kids?
I don't. No, funnily enough, even after all that, I never did have children. I now have a puppy, and dealing with him, I realized that I may not have been the best parent. So probably it's maybe a good idea that I didn't have children. But I had always, as a young man, very much wanted them.
But do you have a person also? Are you in a relationship?
Yes, no. I've got someone in my life for the last 9 years, and we're very happy, and all of that's good. So I'm well taken care of.
Oh, yay. Or as we would say, the price is right. Ladies and gentlemen, I had to put that in there somewhere. I'm sorry. I apologize, but I don't apologize at all for bringing Lonny Price into the Daverhood. Everybody go see The Louder We Get at Theatre Calgary, or then schlep up to London to go see Beaches before it comes to New York also. Ladies and gentlemen, it just remains for me to thank so much Lonny Price for being with us in the Daverhood. Much success and mazel going forward for you. And shalom to you.
Thank you, and thank you for being so well prepared. Sometimes you do interviews and people say, "So what do you do now?" So I very much enjoyed the interview, and again, I'm very grateful that you took the time researching who I was so that we could have a really coaching conversation. I appreciate that a lot, Rabbi Joel.
Well, it's a Talmudic thing. You study and then you talk. Or at least I try to.
That's good. That's a good tradition. I love that.
Tradition.
Shalom to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And your audience, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the interview. Thank you so much.
Likewise, and shalom.
Shalom. Take care.
Lonny Price in the neighborhood, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, what wonderful conversation. Wasn't always funny. I'm not always, I wish I should be always funny, but I'm not. But oh, such terrific stories, such terrific things to hear. And boy, oh boy, theater people, do not go away, because in just a few minutes, I'll be talking to another Broadway person, and off Broadway too, a fellow named Lou Liberatore. So in between though, let's hear a little bit more of Lonny Price. This is, I'm going to cue this up here on the iTunes, as it were, because he's talking, we were talking about Merrily We Roll Along before, the show that he was in, the original production of this musical. Let's hear him do a little something from Merrily We Roll Along, Merrily We Roll Along.
This is for Jack. Merrily we roll along by Kaufman and Hart. 1934, a bomb, but more importantly, the start of a musical by Sondheim, Firth, and Prince. Shit. Merrily in March we'll be on Broadway at last, and it's cast with kids. Put in your bids, we're aging awful fast for this musical by Sondheim, Prince, and Firth. We'll not roll the dice, we'll not roll ahead, we'll not even roll out of the wrong side of the bed, but backwards, 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 we'll be rolling ever backwards in time. Sublime, merrily. ABC is filming us for viewing coast to coast. Not since Company have these three been writing. Give a toast for the musical that's gonna be alone. Firth, Prince, and Sondheim, Brownfield, and I. In Verily, Merrily, Verily, Merrily, ABC, Verily, Merrily, ABC, Eugene Lee, roll along. That's it.
Our guest in the Daverhood, speaking with the great Rabbi Sol Solomon, the one, the only Lonny Price. Such a delight to have him in the Daverhood with us. If you missed all or part of that conversation, remember our archives will be at davesgoneby.com. We will load this show in over the next 24 to 48 hours. It takes a day or two to save the show and load it up and put the notes next to it, and the timing so that you can go to a particular segment. That takes time, although of course you do know, or maybe you don't, that what's wonderful about Facebook also is that we can archive and save our videos right here on this page. So if you know theater people and they couldn't be with us this morning to listen to Lonny Price, or we'll be talking to Lou Liberatore in a couple of just a few minutes, you can go to this Facebook page all week long or weeks hence and scroll down and find this episode and watch it at your leisure as many times as you wish. Speaking of people watching, we've got Dennis and Tom and Andy and Carol and Jeffrey who have tuned in to this show, which is brought to you in part by Hewlett Minuteman Press, the copy kings of Broadway. Broadway, in this case, meaning Broadway in Hewlett, Long Island. The Toron family owns and operates the Hewlett Minuteman franchise and have since the mid-1970s. So they do everything from typical black and white, one-sided copies to double-sided, laminated pages, large-size copies, putting your logo or your company or your team insignia on clothing or sporting goods or big balloons and banners, or they're also known for business cards and wedding invitations. If it involves, and if you have to get the word out about your company or just yourself or some event that you're planning, nobody does it like Hewlett Minuteman Press. Plus, if you tell them Dave sent you, Dave Lefkowitz, this guy who is hosting and producing Dave's Gone By, you get 10% off any job, big or small. So give him a call, 516-569-5577. You can see my eyes going because I'm holding in the burp. 516-569-5577, Hewlett Minuteman Press, the copy kings of Broadway. And what else do I want to mention to you? I did want to mention real quick, since we were doing Inside Broadway, and we'll get back to it in after we have the Lou Liberatore interview. We've got this wonderful magazine, Performing Arts Insider. All the folks who were tuning in to hear Inside Broadway or Lonny Price or Lou, this is the Bible of Broadway since 1944. Everything you want to know, not just about the 30, 40 theaters on Broadway, but off and off too, every stage in New York. So for example, look at this. Here's a guide to the Broadway season, all the shows currently playing, and new shows that are either starting previews, opening, or closing, plus shows running from the previous season, and a little guide to the Broadway district. That's just one page. We get to the next page. These are all the theaters on Broadway, their addresses, how many seats they have, which organization owns them. Is it Nederlander, Schubert, Manhattan Theater Club, Second Stage? This tells you all on one page. And now we start getting to the heavy stuff. Here we go. All the press agents who handle the Broadway shows, a day-by-day calendar listing of when every Broadway show is open, previews, closing, and then the same thing, and you can't find this anywhere else, for off and off Broadway as well. Look at it. Just, what's today's? Today's date is February 8th. So for February 8th, off and off Broadway, we've got a couple of openings. A show called The Journey is opening at the Tank. Princess Petunia is at the 14th Street Y, I believe that's a children's show. And also a revival of Stephen Belber's play Tape is closing at the 13th Street Repertory today. That's all just right there on one page. Couldn't be more simple. And then a rumors page. Ooh, check out these shows. Lonny Price was just talking about beaches, and then this show in Calgary. These shows might find themselves coming to Broadway in the months and years ahead. The rumors page is where you find out about all these shows that just might make it to the Great White Way. And then the heart of the magazine, these incredibly in-depth listings for every show on Broadway, off and off Broadway, all the people involved and how to contact them, all the information, synopses. You don't get this anywhere else but Performing Arts Insider, the Bible of Broadway. To find out more, go to performingartsinsider.com, performingartsinsider.com. Now, this is a hard copy magazine that comes out 12 times a year. It's not on the internet, except it has this website, but that's just to drive subscribers to the hard copy. Although, I should say that if you want to save some trees, you can get the issue emailed to you as a PDF copy, and it also saves you some money. It's a bit cheaper. But either way, all the info is at performingartsinsider.com. You do want to check it out. It is and remains the Bible of Broadway. Well, it is just about 11 o'clock in the morning, excuse me, Eastern time, here in the Daverhood. Very excited. We've had a wonderful time so far. We still have coming up our Colorado Limerick of the Damned, and how can I forget, we have our story time all about punishment. If you missed the early part, I'll explain what this is. But we have another guest coming up. Oh my gosh, let's go back to Broadway. I'm sorry to replay this again, but I don't have any other music to play for this. And we do have our caller. You know what? I don't need music for this, but I do need to bring the Rabbi on. So hold on. Rabbi, oh, good, he's back from the bathroom. Our guest is coming soon.
It's the famous gay white way, where the night is bright as day. Ain't Broadway grand?
It's not just a thoroughfare, it's a tingle in the air. Ain't Broadway grand?
It's excitement, it's romance, it's all fun and song and dance. This wonderland, you can be a millionaire quicker here than anywhere. Ain't Broadway grand?
You audition very well, you're in great form, you can tell. Ain't Broadway grand? As you do your flash and tape, we'll call you is all they say. Ain't Broadway grand? Then it happens they pick you, and your dream is coming true, just as you planned.
yibbity bye bum. Ain't Broadway grand? All right, shut up there, stop that. Oh, it is grand to be in the Daverhood on this Shabbos morning with you, my friends. It has been delightful being so much a part of this Dave's Gone By show today. And boy, oh boy, I am so thrilled and excited to be talking to another Broadway and off-Broadway person. This is a man, oh my gosh, he was on Broadway in As Is and in Burn This, and he is currently off-Broadway in a show that is based on a John Milton thing, kind of biblical. It's called Paradise Lost. Ladies and gentlemen, I am in paradise being able to talk to Lou Liberatore. Shalom and welcome.
Hello, Rabbi. Thank you so much for that.
Shalom, shalom to you. So before anything else, tell us a little bit about this. This is a fellowship for the Performing Arts Theater. Well, they're doing it on Theater Row, this show.
Right.
How do you adapt a giant poem like Paradise Lost into something in the theater? Tell us about the show.
Well, first of all, you have to congratulate Tom Dulac, the playwright, for taking that momentous poem and putting it into a play that in under 100 minutes. It's been a labor of love for him and Michael Park, the director. They've been working on it for many years and brought it to the Fellowship. The Fellowship of Performing Arts is a producing company that does theater from a Christian point of view. And so they present a lot of C.S. Lewis and also Martin Luther on Trial. They do a lot of shows that sort of start here in New York, and they bring them around the country, and they're an incredibly successful, wonderful company. They've been really...
Yeah, I have to say, I was absolutely shocked by this, at realizing that Goyim like theater too. Because I just assumed, you look around Broadway, everybody looks like me, and then it's like, oh, wow, there's actually Christians who are making theater. Go figure. It's an exciting...
And they're coming, and they're buying tickets, and they're enjoying it, and they're buying tickets all over the country to the other shows that tour through this company, and it's been quite wonderful. I think Max McLean, the artistic director of FTA, posted something to the effect that today, Saturday, February 8th, there are about 6,000 people buying tickets and seeing shows produced by FPA.
Wow.
All over the country just today. It's quite an amazing feat.
That is,
hats off to them. They're doing a great job.
And by the way, do give a big hello to Max McLean, who was on this program a few years ago, talking when he was doing Screw Tape Letters, I think it was, or one of those shows. So a hi to him, and of course a hi to you, Lou. Now, from your name, I'm guessing you are Italian, yes?
Always, front and back.
So what was it like? How, I usually ask guests how Jewish they are, but how Italian are you?
How Italian am I? Well, I grew up with an Uncle Junior.
Really?
That helped. Yes. He was the youngest of six. He was my mother's youngest brother.
Yeah.
He was the youngest of six, and while he was growing up, he was referred to as Frankie or Junior, because he's Frank Junior. His dad, my grandfather, was Frank. So he was referred to, they called him Junior, they called him Spanky all these many, many years. And the story that I was told, which I love, is that on his first day of school, he went to my grandmother as he was leaving the door, out the front door, and said, "Ma, what's my name?" So, they said, "Your name is Frank." That's the one he'll be using. But we always knew him as Uncle Junior.
Uncle Junior. Oh, that's fun. So can I, although invariably I do have to ask this, as terribly racist as it is, do you have mafia in did you ever have any run-ins with either the real Italian mafia or the local, East Coast mafia, any of that?
What is this mafia you refer to? I've never heard of that.
All righty. Okay. Just say it. So, but in your family at all?
I think there was a movie with Marlon Brando.
No, it's with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. Come on, what's the matter with you?
That too, as well. And a lot of Martin Scorsese films. I think I've heard something about that. I was never asked to be in a movie of like that kind, and I don't think that represents my family at all. So I don't know. I've never heard of this thing called the mafia. But anyway, I will say that once in a while my father would come home and say, "Hey, this fell off the truck. Do you want it?"
No, is that true? True, or are you joking?
Of course, it's true. Yeah, that's very true. There was one time when, remember, we're hot plates. There were these hot plates. And all of a sudden, everyone got a hot plate for Christmas or their birthday or an anniversary or something. My father had 12 of them for some reason. I'm like, okay.
Okay. What did your father do for a living? Or what did he say he did for a living? Yeah.
My father, he passed back in 2004.
Yeah.
Was a stockbroker.
Oh. Yeah.
And he started at 13 years old. He started in 1929. And his job was running up the ladder to put the prices of the stocks up on the chalkboard.
What day in 1929 did he start his career? Because that was
when he started, exactly.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, was it like before, or was his first day in November 1929, or is it in February 29?
The exact date, I'm not sure, but I know that was the year he started. And he was interviewed when he retired in his 80s.
Yeah.
And the day he retired, he had 3 job offers because he had an amazing book of clients that people wanted, of course.
Yeah.
But he was interviewed. There was an article about him saying that he lived through 2 crashes.
Oh, well, there you go. Let me ask you, though, did that, in your decision to take up such a risky career as acting, did that mean that you had this cushion because your father must have made some pretty good money, so you always knew, unlike some other people, I'm never going to starve on SpaghettiOs. I'm always going to be okay, or not?
Well, we didn't starve because our parents worked hard. We just never said no to us, basically. But my father made other people millionaires. He would give enough stock tips to the guy who parked his car. That's who he was. He wasn't one to. He was a stockbroker that made safe bets. And so I'm not saying we were poor. I'm not saying we were extravagantly wealthy at all. We did fine. But the reason getting into the business, into show business, let's say, the business of show, was mainly because of Carol Burnett, watching her on television. Oh,
okay. Did you want to be? Yeah.
And so I watched a lot of television growing up. That was sort of my babysitter. And watching Carol Burnett, it just sort of hit me. I'm like, you know what? I want to do that. I want to make people laugh. I want to make people cry and stuff. So that's kind of, and I don't think it was a conscious decision by any means. It certainly was in the back of my mind. I don't think I ever wanted to be, I didn't want to follow into my father's footsteps because I never really understood what he did.
He went to Uncle Junior and they made a deal and they shot some people and they brought home hot plates. This is what they know. I'm kidding. But here's the deal then.
No guys were involved.
Did you do much theater stuff in like high school or college?
Yeah, I did a little. I did a little in high school. I had a wonderful neighbor, Danny London, who would always, he was that typical theater kid of it, let's put on a show.
Right.
And so he was a nice, actually, Jewish neighbor of mine, /Jewish, half Italian, who would always put on a show, and he would do a production of Godspell that he was gracious enough to put me in, even though I don't sing and I don't sing well. And but I did little things. But also, I was involved in sports. I was a wrestler. I've been a wrestler since grammar school.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So lots of times, the rehearsals for plays would coincide with practices for wrestling. And so I did a couple of things in high school. West Side Story. I was Bernardo. But he didn't sing in the stage version that we did, so it was fine. Things like that. And then once I got into college, again through my friend Danny, I went to Boston College for a semester because they had a wrestling team in the theater department. Oh. But I kept talking to my friend Danny, my neighbor, who went to Fordham at Lincoln Center in New York.
Yeah. And
he kept telling me about a play he was directing or a play he was acting in, and all. And I'd be like, well, we read The Adding Machine again here, and doing nothing. So I transferred to Fordham, and that's where it really kind of
And
I went full steam ahead, focusing on theater.
And not to be cliche about this, but you were into wrestling all these. Was there a moment as a let's say teenager, a young teenager in wrestling, when somebody was pinning you and you're like, oh, I like boys, or was it not quite like that?
It never ever entered my mind while I was wrestling at all. No, there was never. I knew I was gay from maybe 8th grade or so, but I think I was a late bloomer in my sexual awakening, let's say, and so it was never something that got in the way or I thought about or distracted me. I just was focusing. I was focusing on wrestling, which I was decent. I wasn't great by any means, but it's a wonderful sport.
Yeah.
But no, it was never part of my. No, it was never in my head or in my actions or any of that. And then once I got into college, I realized, there's guys out there. And that was sort of an interesting, transition at that. I still wrestle to this day. I mean, I was my home team is the Golden Gate Wrestling Club in San Francisco, and funny story. After my hip surgery, my hip replacement, in 2014. 2016, I wrestled in the Gay Games in Cleveland, and I got a silver medal.
Now, wait, wouldn't your doctor tell you, after they're replacing your hip, like, you can walk, you can even maybe take a slow bike ride, you can do a lot, you can act, certainly, in normal things. Don't!
You can ask a lot of directors and writers. I sometimes tend not to listen to them. And so I jumped out of bed immediately the day after. So they want you on your feet immediately.
Oh.
They want you to walk and push. And I knew physically I was in decent shape before the operation. And afterward, I was like, this isn't going to stop me. I just want to get better because I have no patience for that. So I got better real quick. And then next couple of years, there was a tournament, and I was like, hey.
Wow.
I was on the team back, I think, 2008 or so, when they were going to Amsterdam, but I got a gig. I got an acting gig, and I couldn't go. So this was an opportunity for me.
Now, speaking of acting gigs, Lou Liberatore, what was Circle Rep really your entree into the field?
Circle Rep is everything. Every time I practice an acceptance speech about some award I've lost, Circle Rep is always going to be how it all started, how it all began for me. And even at Fordham, when I was at Fordham, Rod Marriott, who was a literary manager at Circle Rep at the time, was a teacher of mine, a professor of mine. And upon graduation, while all these people were going to grad school, I wasn't. He said, well, what are you going to be doing? I said, I really don't know. He says, why don't you be an intern at Circle Rep? I said, okay. And that's how it all began. I started there, building sets and hanging lights and shoveling the snow off the theater so the water doesn't drip on the stage, and running for get coffee for Lanford Wilson, and that's kind of how it all began.
Wow. Do you have any stories about some of those, like Lanford Wilson, Marshall W. Mason, some of those, Bill Hurt?
I mentioned, as is, while I was an intern, and after I finished my internship, it was about a year, so I was in the lab there, and I was just walking down the hall one day, and Bill Hoffman said, Lou, come here. And he brought me into a room and goes, I've written a couple of scenes of this little play. Do you want to just read them for me with a couple of guys? I'm like, okay. And we sit in a room, we're reading it, and I'm like, oh, Bill, what's the name of this play? It's called Two Loves. Oh, Bill, that title. What is that? And that play became As Is.
Right.
And slowly but surely, it was something that kind of pulled me in out of the hallway. I read a couple of scenes. A few months later, he read more scenes. A few months later, it became a play. A few months later after that, we developed, and boom, it opened Circle Rep, and it went to Broadway.
Well, come to think of it,
show.
Since we bring that up, for people who don't know, As Is was the first major show of any kind to tackle the AIDS crisis and gay life in New York.
Right. That went to Broadway.
Right.
Because This Normal Heart was being written literally at the same time as we were. It was written. It was being rehearsed, and at the same time, while they were at the Public and we were at Circle Rep, it was almost side by side. And Larry Kramer, God bless him, is the big mouth that he is and that we know and love.
Yeah.
He got a lot more press, certainly. But we opened, I think, approximately around the same time, and his was, this political, hair-raising play, which was exciting, and ours was quieter, smaller love story. They saved the public, and it went on for a while, and we moved to Broadway.
Right.
We were the first play that dealt with AIDS on Broadway. We were proud to say. I'm proud to say.
Now,
and it was an exciting.
a gay person who was a young man, a literal man back in that day, and being in that play, and being in New York during what was at the time, AIDS was a death sentence at that period.
Exactly. And it was happening every day we went to rehearsal. Not only did the play change daily with new information or false information that we had to delete, or just hearing about someone who just died as I was walking to rehearsal. We were in the middle of it. We were in the middle of history, and I couldn't say that at that moment. We just knew we were in the middle of this crisis that was going on, and watching Bill and Marshall craft this piece so beautifully, but also so devastatingly. We couldn't help but be affected, and it so informed all of our choices, all of our decisions, all of our performances, that there wasn't a false note anywhere from the beginning of that till when we closed. And it was amazing that we were just in the middle of it, writing and rewriting and adjusting and correcting. And just recently, my boyfriend Christopher directed a production of it at Baruch, where he teaches at Baruch College, and it was amazingly successful and devastating to watch again.
Were you?
Earlier,
Were you personally? Yeah. Sorry. Go.
Just that the year prior, Michael Urie helped produce the Pride plays at Rattlestick during Pride, and we did a reading of As Is. And Cheryl Cowler directed us, and Mario Cantone and Jerry Dixon played Saul and Rich, and I read all the roles that I did on Broadway, including my brother. So I was kind of, I wasn't sure how it was going to be received. Well, the house just blew them away. It was incredible, and that's kind of where Christopher got the idea that he wanted to stage it again. So it was amazing how I thought it was going to be dated, but it wasn't at all, and it's still incredibly powerful, and it works.
But I also want to know, as just a person, as a human being in New York and gay at that, I mean, were you terrified? Did you wake up did you go to the doctor every?
I was celibate for that whole time,
right? Yeah.
Because everybody was scared of just breathing the wrong way or looking at someone if they catch it. We didn't know where to turn, what to do. It was one of the blackest times of my life, of the history of my life, because you didn't know what to do. So theater, in a way, was my safety, as it always has been. Theater has been my religion. Theater is the church I go to, and so it was a safe haven, so to speak. For me during that time, and I thank God for that, because it certainly saved me. It was an amazing. This is how theater saved my life. Theater changed my life, and this place particularly, and Circle Rep, and I can't say enough about Marshall Mason and the great Bill Hoffman.
Well, speaking even still of these people in Circle Rep, and a play that is kind of about AIDS but isn't, but kind of is another show that you were on Broadway in, called Burn This, which is Langford Wilson.
Yeah. And I like to say, it's Langford's AIDS play in that regard, because it's about this loss of an artist. That happens at the beginning of the play. We come back from this funeral and of this gorgeous dancer, this wonderful who's a choreographer. But there's the death of an artist and how it affects everyone around him. And so that's and nothing is ever mentioned overtly in that play until the final scene with Burton and
Pale.
And not Burton and Larry, actually. When he talks about having an immune system, and Larry's like, well, yeah, it's kind of useful to have. That's the only sort of like oblique reference to it. But I definitely see Burn This as Langford's AIDS play. On a side note, do you know who replaced me on Broadway in Burn This?
Who replaced her on Broadway? Hold on, let me think. Arnold Stang. No, wait.
Close, very close.
Very close. Wait. Yeah. Hold on. Sherman Hemsley. No, I give up. Who?
Mr. Lonny Price.
Oh my gosh! This is an in-joke because I just interviewed Lonny Price a few moments ago on the thing. Yeah.
I know.
Oh my God! Well, here's the thing about you. Were you a cast replacement in Burn This, right? Or were you from the original?
No, I was the original.
You were in the so you and I would love to hear if you have any stories at all about John Malkovich.
John, I can't say enough about him too. He's a sweetheart. He's funny. He's definitely humorous and dry. Let's see. One thing about John. We were about 6 months into the run. And John said, Lou, listen, I'm going to wear something new on stage tonight. See if you can find it. So I said, oh, great, fine. We're very comfortable. We're doing the play. It's opened. We're doing very, very well. We're having a great time. It's a great cast.
Yeah.
Building long. It's just been lovely. And so I'm like, oh, cool. That'd be fun. And so he enters, and I'm looking at him top to bottom, inside and out, whatever. Okay. Next scene. Every time I see him, intermission, I can find it, and then I get to Act 2, and I'm looking, and end of the play, curtain calls down. I'm like, John, what is it? I couldn't find it. I couldn't keep my eyes off you. And he says, exactly what your character should be doing.
Oh.
He was giving me, subtly, a little note, because the director that he is. And it was wonderful. But it shows how playful and fun he was. It's something that he cared about, was serious about. So I took it, and I love him.
Because the producer of this program, Dave, he remembers seeing Burn This with John Malkovich back in the, and it was just he tore the roof off that theater. Oh, it was not that you weren't great too, but there was something about when Malkovich came on stage. Yeah. Now, before we get away from AIDS, I wish we could all get away from AIDS, but before you actually did an AIDS movie with Olivia Newton-John. Huh?
This is a movie called It's My Party.
Yeah.
And it was written by Randall Kleiser and directed by Randall Kleiser.
Got it.
It's based on a true story that Randall's former partner, Harry, was good friends of my partner at the time, Joel Thurm. Joel and I lived in California, and we had Randall directed Grease, and my former partner was the casting director for Grease.
Oh.
And so they've been friends for many, many, many years. And Harry, at that time, we didn't know Harry was ill. And Harry and Randall always had a pact, even though they were not together any longer. They had a pact that if Harry got sick, he would take his own life rather than, live through, hospitals and hospice, etc.
Right.
So all of a sudden, I saw Harry at the gym one day, and he was like, "Oh, Lou, did you see my sunglasses?" And they were on his head. I'm like, Harry, they're right there. And Harry was always funny and silly and all, but he was never absent-minded. And so we saw a little of that happening here and there. And so we then got a call that there was this party that Harry was giving, wanting to say goodbye to everyone, because Harry realized he only had a couple of weeks left to live. And so we did go to this party, and Joel always had a camera with him. He said, should I bring, as we're going to the party, should I bring the camera with you? I said, well, bring it, but, keep it low. Don't sort of advertise it. Well, while we were at this party, everybody wanted a final picture with Harry, because they knew that's what this party was about, was he was saying goodbye to all of us. And it was very surreal. He'd pop into a room where we'd all be, and he's like, hey, Lou, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, I don't know. He goes, yeah, me neither. And exit. And we're all like, wow, this is surreal. It was insane. So at this party, which was scheduled to be sort of a 2-day affair, Joel was snapping pictures all over the place. Then on the third day, they sort of had to, the party had to be held over, so to speak, because friends from Europe had to fly in to say goodbye to him, like Helena Bonham Carter and a whole bunch of people. And so on the final day, just his close circle of family was around him, and he and with a doctor, assisted suicide, he left us that way. And then months later, there was a memorial, and at the memorial, Joel gave Randall this packet, saying, here are the pictures I took. You know, when you have time, look through them, see what's what. As Randall was looking through these pictures, he remembered what Harry had told him was, you know, get back to writing those stories, those interpersonal stories that you did early on when you were at USC and your early career. And from that, he wrote It's My Party. Joel produced it and helped cast the film. And in the film, I played Joel. I played my former partner with the camera. And I also assisted Randall with some improvisational moments in the play. I teach improv, and so I helped him with moments and things, and sort of set those scenes up for, you know, I would walk through the scenes, we'd set them up, and have people come in. I'd give groups of people little suggestions on what to say, you know, Margaret Cho, and Eric Roberts, Olivia Newton-John, Marley Matlin. It was wonderful. Bruce Davis, and it was great.
Wow. Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience, because it was a true story. We all knew Harry, we all loved Harry, and
but it's boggling my mind that literally on the third day of the party, while people were still kind of there, was when he, you know.
But at that point, you know, people had mainly left, and it was just a small circle of his family and close friends. We you know, so it was only like a small circle who then, but then the actual event happened, just Harry, just the doctor, and just a couple of people.
Wow. Fun stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, what?
Oh, there you go. There you go. Right?
Well, it's a hell of a story, I'll tell you that. We're talking with Lou Liberatore here. By the way, how do you pronounce your own name?
Funny you should ask. My parents would always say Liberator. Liberator. They were very much from that generation of Americanize everything. It was Liberator. And growing up, I always felt I was kind of tripping over my teeth saying my name. And years later, at Circle Rep, by the way, the wonderful playwright Joe Cantaro said to me, you know, Lou, you're mispronouncing your name. I said, Joe, what do you mean? He says, it's Lou Liberatore. I said, well, yeah, Joe, I'm not exactly going to walk into a room and say, hi, my name is Lou Liberatore. But since then, I've always pronounced all the letters as most of the Italian words are. They're Liberatore. So I say Liberatore. So
you do say with the E on the E, Liberatore on the end.
I pronounce the E at the end. Most of my family say Liberatore.
So, see, well, that's the thing. If I hear that, I'm confused when I have to take Lipitor. So I'd rather call you Liberatore, and it's much easier for me. Now, everybody can go... It was not easy growing up in grammar school. People should go see this man. He's on Theater Row doing a show called Paradise Lost from the Fellowship for the Performing Arts. But to find out how to get tickets and how to go, by the way, it's FPA Theater, and that's theater with an R-E, FPAtheater.com to go see this adaptation of John Milton's Paradise Lost by Tom Dulac. But we do not lack for questions, other questions, for Lou Liberatore. For example, I do want to ask that you were in a show or a TV thing called a sequel, I guess you would say. If it's Tuesday, it still must be Belgium with Lou Jacoby. Oh my God, do you have a Lou Jacoby story?
I wish I did. I'm sorry. I wish I did. I was too busy just finding my way around. We were in Yugoslavia, when it was Yugoslavia. That's when we shot this movie, and I was worried about what I was eating, so I brought my own brown rice, and we weren't sure about that the DAG that was on the menus was actually what we weren't sure what this DAG was on the menu, so we kind of were a little scared about that. I unfortunately do not have a Lou Jacoby story. I wish I had. He was a treasure.
All right, okay, fair enough. So,
but I was Courtney Cox's. I like to say, in that movie, I was affianced to Tracy Nelson, and then with Claude Akins, we go to Europe on this tour, and I meet Courtney Cox, that she played, and I like to say she's my like interest, not my love interest, because we never kissed on camera.
Well, it'd be kind of wasted on you. Of all things, you know, no offense, but of all people to send to play a love interest with 20-year-old Courtney Cox, they send a gay guy. I'm sorry. Any actor would have traded.
That's Hollywood, baby.
I know, it is. My gosh. Well, tell us, you know, one of the things about you is that not only have you been on and off Broadway, but you have a list of IMDb credits. And I'm kind of curious what might be one or two of your favorite parts, favorite roles, or things that you think people should seek out if they can find it on, you know, YouTube or Hulu. Oh, I was really good in that, or that's a really good show, you know?
Well, I usually, I think the play that I'm doing at the moment is always, whatever project I'm doing at the moment is certainly my favorite at the moment.
Of course.
You know, so Paradise Lost, I'm having a wonderful time doing that, and it's a great role, and stellar cast. I can't say enough about Alison Fraser and Mel Johnson and Robbie Simpson, Marina Shea, David McDonald.
Sure.
Just are incredible ensemble that we have put together. And I love this character, Beelzebub. Tom's written an incredibly funny character, and really kind of
well, wait, let me
come from the same wheelhouse, which is nice.
Let me stop you there, because what a hell of a thing, because within a year's span, you went from playing God to the devil, because you were just in a play a couple of months ago by Peter Felicia. What was it called? It was God something?
God shows up.
God shows up. You played God. Yeah.
I played God, and we were, and actually God shows up, and it was at the Actors Temple.
Of course.
Which was even better.
And written by another Italian.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That was quite fun. Peter wrote this wonderful play about this televangelist who had a talk show, and at one point God writes a letter and says, "Hey, I want to be on your show." So God shows up. And
well, let me ask, which for you now play God and the devil, which is closer to typecasting for you? It depends on who you ask. If we ask Christopher, what would he say?
Well, my partner Steve will definitely say, I think the Beelzebub character is closer to me than the God character. There's a little bit of all of it. There's a little bit of both in all of me. That's all I can say. I'm lumpy in that respect.
Now, you did study acting. I mean, you said you did a little bit of theater here and there in high school and stuff, but you were at Bill Esper and other acting teachers in schools, and you actually teach improv. Now, what is one of the best one or two pieces of advice that you ever received or learned about the nature of acting and performance?
Certainly from Bill Esper, who was, again, one of the great architects of my career and so many other people's careers. Basically, know what role you are, know who you are. He always said, excuse me. He always said, not everyone is cut out to play Hamlet. And so it's knowing who you are, where you fit into whatever category that is. And so to save yourself time and energy and upset, know that whether you're a leading man, you're a character actor, you're an ingenue, etc., knowing that just saves you, the directors and the casting people and your agents, lots of time and energy. Is just, what roles are for you. There's certainly roles that you can play, but there are a lot of roles that you are. And when I read a play or a script, TV or film or something, I like to see certainly what I can bring to it, but I react. I connect, I should say, to something when it really hits home to me. And so knowing where you are on that sort of actor.
That's good. No, but I was just talking, as you know, before to Lonny Price, and he said what happened with him was he knew he was a 5'6" balding Jewish guy, and he quit acting because he realized, that's what I'm gonna get, So
I'm an inch taller, and I still have hair. So
you're not Jewish.
Staying in at the moment. But on top of that, I'm not as talented as Lonny Price is. Yeah. And so at the moment, if you still got words for me to say, I will say them. And as long as I can do it.
Well, actually, this is the question that everybody asks. And you are a veteran actor. Some might say a journeyman actor. I mean, you might not be a household name, but you get work. You get constant work. But if you hadn't made it in the field, if you couldn't support yourself at this point in the career, what might you have been?
I have no idea. I'll be honest with you. I don't know really what else to do. For a chunk of time in the middle of my career, when I was a little too old for high school, too young for young dads, I was in retail for a good. I was on stage for a good 10, 15 years, and I did retail, which was a sort of theater. You know, I had my props to sell, and I had my little theater stage to work out of. So I did pretty well with that. So and theater is a type of sales. You know, certainly you're selling the story, you're selling yourself. So I suppose I'd go into some sort of sales and, you know, role. But I'll be honest with you, I can't really even see myself doing anything else.
Well, yeah.
It's that clear and strong in my bones. I know when I'm not doing something. Ask my partner, ask my boyfriend. I'm not useful at all. I'm kind of a wreck. So if I'm not working, I don't exist.
Now, one thing we didn't mention, since when I said that you are working, and you're certainly more visible now, I would say, than you have been in like 20 years since the Burn This days and the As Is days. You're much more.
But I won't correct you on that. But go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, but the thing is, what we haven't mentioned is that you've also done a ton of regional theater. You've acted all over America. So, what is like one of the favorite experiences that you've had, or the funniest things that have happened while you've been appearing in the regionals?
Well, first and foremost, one of the best experiences I ever had was playing Roy Cohn in Angels in America.
Whoa. Okay.
And
Where?
I did that at the Actors Theater Louisville. Meredith McDonough was our director, and it was a real life-changing experience for me on many levels.
Why?
I was doing Daniel's husband at the time down at the Cherry Lane at the Primary Stages, and Ryan Spahn, who was in the show with me, we were in the dressing room, and he yelled at me, "Lou, have you ever done Roy Cohn?" I went, "Oh, yeah, I've done scenes in class and things like that, but I've never actually performed." He goes, "Oh, okay," and that was it. That was the end of the conversation. I had no idea what he was talking about. And unbeknownst to me, he was texting with Meredith McDonough, the director, about me because Ryan was supposed to do the play but had to drop out for another commitment. And they were talking, and Meredith was saying, "Do you have any suggestions for actors for Roy Cohn?" And so, not knowing, he was sending pictures of me to her and talking about me, et cetera, et cetera. And about a week or so later, I got a call about an audition, and it would be put on tape. Meredith was out of town, so I'd be put on tape. And I got the sides, and it was the audition side. And it was the opening scene in Roy's opening monologue.
Right.
And so I rehearsed, and I went to have it taped at the place called the Tape Room with Marcia DeBonis. And I sent her the material, and I booked an appointment for half an hour. And she, confirms the appointment, says, "Okay, I'm ready to work on these scenes with you." And I looked at her going, "Scenes? It's just one, but whatever." And I could have let it go. And I got there, and she says, "So, listen, you only booked a half an hour." I said, "Well, yeah, it's only this one scene." She goes, "Lou, it's 4 scenes." I went, 4? I said, what are you talking about?" I said, "Well, okay." So we expanded it. We booked for an hour, and I said, "I haven't even looked at these other scenes." So we kind of ran through them once or so, and we taped them, and it came out okay. But I felt good with it because Tony's words are so wonderful. I just immediately responded and clicked and connected to this role.
Yeah.
And so we put this tape together. It was like 20 minutes long. And casting people want to see 2 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah.
At most, it's not even that much. So I'm like, and it's like 5 o'clock at night, and it has to be at 10 o'clock the next morning, and I was kind of freaking out. I was calling my agent. I was like, "I don't know what happened," and I was like, "Oh, kind of, in a tizzy, major tizzy." And he said, "Don't worry." So we send this tape the next morning, and I'm at home thinking to myself, "What happened? Why? How come I missed these scenes? What's going on?" Inadvertently, I had sent her an old audition side to Marcia DeBonis at the tape room. I had sent her an old audition, not the Actors Theater audition.
Oh, no.
So, which I got deleted from my computer, and so I basically ended up doing 4 scenes, and they sent it to the casting director, and they liked it. And later that afternoon, my agent calls me and told me I got the part, which is great. what I found out months later is that Meredith was talking to a co-star saying, God, this actor really wants this part. He just kept sending us scene after scene after scene. He's like reading the whole play. And like she was all excited, go, this actor really, really wants this. Not knowing, I just totally screwed up.
Oh my gosh.
Like doing too much, and also cursing her the whole time, going, how dare they? Why don't they have to just do the whole play? Like he said, anyway, I got the part.
Anyway, and by the way, we have a listener who typed in and said that, who saw you in Louisville doing Angels in America, and says that you were one very scary Roy Cohn, which is a compliment.
Robert, my partner, by the way.
Oh, okay, yes. But here's a question. You know, to play a character, I mean, you're playing the devil now, so it doesn't get worse than that. But how do you get into such an awful, terrible person like Roy Cohn? Yeah.
Well, you don't see them as awful and terrible. I mean, Roy was about survival, and he would do anything in his power to stay in power, to keep his name. And the biggest thing about him was being disbarred. That was his biggest fear. So he would do anything in his power to keep that, as well as to stay closeted. So it was, for him, it was this animal that was caged, and he was surrounded, and he was just fighting for survival in any way, shape, or form.
And that's what you responded to. That's
man ever.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
And that's what you responded to. You were able to, because you have to identify on some level, even when you're playing a rotter. Was that maybe what the part that most spoke to you when you're doing someone like Roy Cohn in Angels?
Well, yeah, you have to find something actable. You know, you have to find something that you can do. You have to find an action, and his action was to survive.
Yeah. And
so the actions that he took because of that came out the way they came out, which were disgusting and horrific and terrible. But to him, it was a survival mode. Now
this sounds like an amazing career highlight. Or it was a career highlight for you doing Angels in America at Louisville ATL. But what about the worst experience you ever had doing regional or maybe off-Broadway theater? What's an experience that you were like, oh, God, how did I get into this?
There was something, actually, I've got to say, without sounding too Pollyanna-ish, I've been very, knocking on wood here.
Knocking wood.
Very blessed to have been involved in many, many, many successful, enjoyable, fun.
I know, but come on, there must have been.
I will give you one.
Okay.
Because I never actually did it because I got fired.
Oh, that's bad. Yeah.
This was, and in a way, it was a blessing. It was White Noise. It was a musical called White Noise.
Oh yeah.
And it was based on this. I think it was
a white supremacist band or something like that, wasn't it?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
They were called Prussian Blue. And if you go on YouTube and look for them, they've even been interviewed. I think they were interviewed by Diane Sawyer, whatever. But there was a sister duo, little folk singers, who would play basically what I call the KKK circuit. They went Oregon, Washington, Idaho, all over that part of the country. They would sing love songs to Hitler and white supremacy. Well, there was a spoof musical written about them that played like NIMF for one of those musical festivals here in town, Fringe or whatever.
Yeah. Somebody
brought that product and turned it into a real musical, and I played the manager of this group, which was now then a three-piece rock ensemble, I managed them, and they had incredibly racist songs. They said, well, if you just change the lyrics of some of them, your diehard followers will still know how racist you are, but your crossover fans will think it's just a wonderful pop song. On the other hand, I also was representing these brothers who are rap brothers, and they were singing quite racist songs from their point of view as well. So I was this manager, and this was produced by Mitchell Maxwell. Oh
my God, yeah. There was a whole fraud thing with him, wasn't there, or something like that?
Yeah, he checks bounced with him, and there was a whole drama about him went to jail, whatever. And so he was co-directing and also producing. And he would just give me the strangest direction. And at one point, and I was having trouble with my lines at the time because I didn't have any songs. I just had the book. And so he says, "What do you need?" I said, "Well, I need to do the scene, get notes, and do it again." He goes, "Yeah, it's not going to happen." I said, "Oh, okay." And there was just the strangest whole rehearsal period, and I just wasn't getting it at that time. And it's my first musical I'd ever done. It was a Broadway musical, and I'd never been involved with that. The songs, the dances, they were down. They were ready to open, and I was still working on my lines. We're like 2 weeks into rehearsal. And then at one rehearsal, I saw my standby leave the room with the producer. Then I saw him walk back in, and like he was ashen. He was just white faced. And I said, "Excuse me, was I just fired?" He said, "Call your agent." So I called my agent, and he's like, "What are you still doing there?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. No one said anything." He goes, "Well, you've been let go." And no one told me. I'm in rehearsal, getting notes, and they had fired me. And it was insane. So I walked out of that place. It was just horrible. It was just the worst feeling I ever had. I've never been fired before. And it was just...
But you got your what's not comeuppance, but you got a little bit of revenge because White Noise did not make it to Broadway by any stretch of the imagination.
No. The drama that happened is that we went down to New Orleans to do it at the Petit Theater, and Mitchell was actually removed from the production for some activities that he allegedly, I wasn't there for done, but there was not nice things mentioned about what he had done. He was removed from the production, a lot of upset, and then eventually Sergio Trujillo took hold of it. It was in Chicago, and it never made it into Broadway. So, but the best part of that was that I got cast about a week or so later in that championship season up at Westport, and which was one of the greatest experiences I ever experienced. His name just went out of my head. Directed, and Bobby Clohessy and John Doman, Skip Sudduth, Tom Nellis. It was an incredible production. So I was getting 2 paychecks. So I was very happy.
Oh, isn't that's nothing better than that, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, say hello if you ever speak to Robert Clohessy also, because he was on this program many, many years ago. And I'm glad he's still active.
He just came to the show a couple of weeks ago. We had dinner together.
Oh, mit Mazel Nicklick. By the way, unfortunately, we have to wrap up our talk with Lou Lib. I'm going to stretch her name out very long right now. Liberatore. Isn't that beautiful?
There you go. Good for you.
Now, if people want tickets to see Paradise Lost off-Broadway at the Theater Row Theater, which is over by like 8th and 9th Avenue and West 42nd Street, they can go to fpatheater.com, and that's theater with an R-E, fpatheater.com. Do you have a website, or where can people follow your career?
The best way to follow me is on Twitter at Lou Liberatore, or on Instagram at LC Liberatore.
Now, speaking of your career, Paradise Lost is a limited run. It's running only through March 1st. So I imagine you're going to be in something else pretty soon after that. Do you know what it is?
We're in negotiation.
Oh, okay.
But yes, there's something coming up hopefully in April or so.
Wow. Well, let me ask you, the last question then for Lou Liberatore is, when you're not acting, and you're just around New York, what is a hobby of you? What do you like to do in your spare time? Not that actors have any spare time, but when you're not teaching or acting or having to go to classes or voice work or any of that stuff, what is a non-theatrical thing that you like to do?
Non-theatrical, that's tough, because even on my nights off, I go to the theater. My partner Steve is an architecture nut, and so he loves old buildings and old signs that are, signs that are still painted on walls, and also he's opened my eyes to up to this gorgeous architecture, old and new, in New York City. And so that's something I like to do, is just kind of walk around the city and look up.
That's not a bad thing to, I mean, unless you're tripping over dog poop, and then you kind of have to look down a little bit. But boy, oh boy, things are looking up for us right here when we talk to wonderful, talented folks like Lou Liberatore. Go see him in Paradise Lost at the Theater Row Theater. It just remains for me to say, Lou, and may I call you Lou?
Please.
Lou, it has been a delight to talk to you, and I just wish you health and success and all good things going forward. Happy Valentine's Day as well to you and your partner, and shalom to you.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to talk with you today and letting me just go ramble on and on about myself. But shalom to you, a big hug, and continued success, all that you do. And thank you for your immense support of the theater. Can't say that enough.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And shalom. Bye-bye now.
Shalom. Bye.
Lou Liberatore in the Daverhood with me, Rabbi Sal. Now, let's see. I have to play some music to get me out of here to bring Dave back on, because we still, believe it or not, they has more show to do. I mean, all the best parts of the show, me talking to people like Lou Liberatore and Lonny Price, that's done with. So now we have the detritus of the Dave's Gone By show to get through. But at least there's still more. So hang with us. Dave will be back momentarily. Well, the views expressed by Rabbi Saul Solomon do not necessarily represent my views when he talks about the other segments of the program, which we still have to get to. We have just a couple. It's going to be a couple little fun things to do. Again, I apologize to Cynthia and Jeff, who tune in every single week, and they look forward to our Today-Yesterday quiz. But with two guests on the show, and it's almost noon already, I'm afraid we had to table that. I also had to table Grilly Crimes and Old Times for the week, just because Joyce isn't here. You know, she's off seeing her wonderful parents, and it's more fun to do that segment with her. But thank you, everybody. By the way, all these folks who are tuning in, we've got Lawrence and Susanna, and of course, Steve was making comments during the interview there with Rabbi Saul and Lou Liberatore, because Steve and Lou know each other very, very well. And also Marcus and Jeffrey and Carol and Andy and Tom from the old UNC college radio station in Dennis, and Trevor from another old radio station, and Jeff and Larry and Dorothy from Colorado, and Richard, a theater person, and Frank and Glenn and Bruce and Tom, speaking of theater people, and Robert, another theater critic person, and Claudia from my high school. Oh, and I think we have a new comment from somebody, but I can't see it. But welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as I keep telling you over and over again, if you missed all or part of the show, be it me rambling on about politics and comedy, or be it Rabbi Saul's interviews with Lonny Price and Lou Liberatore, remember that after the show's over, you can scroll down on Facebook and watch it anytime over again. And we've been doing it now on Facebook for a good 2 years, I think. So there's a wonderful backlog of shows that are on video, not to mention just audio radio shows. But remember that all our archives are at davesgoneby.com. And that includes a whole separate archive of just the interviews. So if you want to wade through entire 90-minute or 3-hour or sometimes 4-hour shows, and you just want to hear, oh my gosh, he spoke to Dick Cavett, he spoke to Carol Channing, he spoke to so-and-so. Yeah, we did. I mean, Carl Reiner. These people have been on the program, and you can go back and listen anytime. It's all at davesgoneby.com. We've also been putting the recent archives up at a wonderful website called archive.org. And that's a place I love that I'm rubbing shoulders with old episodes of like Vic and Sade and Gene Shepard shows, and same website. I mean, it's the YouTube idea. It's the great equalizer. It's like this little podcasty radio show, Dave's Gone By, is the same website, same place, same click away from old Fred Allen episodes, or Bob Hope on the radio, or things like that. So I think that's kind of cool. And I'm going to give a very quick shout out not that I'm remotely in the same league. Since this was a day where I almost sound like I'm pro-Republican, go figure, but I also want to give a health shout out to Rush Limbaugh, somebody that I never listened to except once or twice here and there, someone I do not agree with generally politically, but you gotta give the man props. He was his own, or he's alive, but as he has cancer, apparently 4th stage, so he's going through that. And leaving aside politics, here's the deal. He was a consummate entertainer. That's the thing. He could speak extemporaneously in a funny, gripping way that I only wish that I could. You know, it's the same thing of when I used to watch Bill O'Reilly on Fox News and get infuriated because he was so smug and we would be politically miles apart. But there was a certain way that he expressed himself, even if it is sound bites. That takes tremendous skill and poise and talent to do that. And Limbaugh would do that with comedy because he was always a puckish, devilish nature to him. And I even read some of a book, his bio that he wrote. And there's this thing where you just want to shake him a little bit, where he says, look, there's an infinite amount of money available in America. There's no limit on the amount of money that a person can make if they make it. There isn't this ceiling. That's the great thing about capitalism, the great thing about America. You can always shoot for more, aim for more. And if you work hard and blah, blah, blah. And there was only the slightest acknowledgement that in terms of career, he hit the lottery. That he was just good in a certain way. He found his niche, and lucky too, because you need good and luck at the same time. And he hit it. He hit that lot and made millions and millions of dollars and millions of fans and has fame and everything that he wants. And then there's that assumption because he was able to, and that the doors of America were open for him, that, well, they are for everybody else. They're really not. As much as he tries to convince you of that. But as a guy behind the mic who can make you sit in traffic and entertain you for 2-3 hours and think about politics, even if you're shouting at the radio or want to call in and agree or disagree, as someone who could do that in a way better than most other people could. Big shout out then to Rush Limbaugh. And if he influenced our political world, and he gave us, on some level, the likes of George W. Bush and the likes of Donald Trump and the likes of Mitch McConnell and the likes of, what was his, John Boehner, right? If his influence on listeners to his show, millions of people, swayed the needle, well, that is unfortunate. But that also talks to a certain amount of power and talent that Rush Limbaugh has and had. So we do wish him a good recovery, if that's at all possible to happen, because from one radio person to another, and it's not nice to lose radio people on any sides of the island. We've just been losing. Harry Harrison died about 2 weeks ago, for all New Yorkers who remember CBS FM. CBS, we feel nostalgic about it, even though, like all radio stations, it kind of sucked. But it was a voice. It was a voice of our lives. It was a voice we tune into. And now that's gone too. So they go. But Dave's Gone By endures 17 years plus. And welcome, by the way, to Susanna and Monique and Nancy and all the folks who are tuning in this late into the show. It's noon already. We've been here 3 hours and we're not quite done. So let's get through a little bit more of this program. Dave's Gone By with me, Dave Lefkowitz. Is our 732nd episode of the program on this Saturday, February 8th, 2020. We've been calling it, by the way, the subtitle of our episode is The Price is Liberating, because you had Lonny Price and Lou Liberatore. I know, I tried. Anywho, before we get to anything else, well, we have a couple more things. We have our friends of the Daverhood, our Colorado Limerick of the Damned, but I don't want to let the opportunity for story time go. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it's story time.
Tell me a story, tell me a story, tell me a story. Remember what you said. You promised me, you said you would. You gotta give in, so
origins, as I guess a lot of you know, the origins of Storytime were serendipitous. It was me having the brakes worked on my old Subaru back in Colorado, and in the bin for stuff for people to read when they're sitting there waiting for their car to be jacked up on hydraulics. And then if you've ever been jacked up on hydraulics, you know how fun that can be. There's reading material, not only for parents to have the daily newspaper and Hot Rod magazine and what have you, but if mothers are bringing their children in tow while waiting for a spare to be fixed or wheels to be greased, there's a little stack of children's stuff, like highlights, magazine sort of stuff, and then little golden books. But there was also a book called A Cow for Hansel. What was it, Hans or Hansel? But it was just this children's book written in the late 1960s about a little German boy pre-World War I, let alone World War II, whose family is so poor that all they can do, all that kid can do is work like crazy to try and buy his family a cow. Swear to God, that was the book. And it was just so weird to find that, especially where I found it, that I was like, let me share this with my listeners. And every week I read a chapter from A Cow for Hansel. And it was kind of fun and kind of neat. And I took it seriously, but also poked fun at it. And since then, this is a few years ago now, we try and read some other material, saves me from having to write my own, and do a little bit of story time. And I've gone for serendipity again this week, ladies and gentlemen, because our story comes directly, this is a story from the streets, my friends, literally. I found in the gutter, walking, I don't know if it was, I think it was in New York, actually, this page out of a book. And I thought, you know what? Somehow God or whoever meant for me to find this. And this will be our story time for today. And as soon as I saw the headline on it, I had to. Punishment. Because this is the kind of thing I would find. I'm the guy who gets terrible fortune cookies in Chinese restaurants. I'm the guy who finds a page torn out of a book, and it's the punishment page, page 672, out of what appears it is not Crime and Punishment. It's not, half of Dostoevsky's book. In fact, it's part of a book called Psychology of the School Child. There you go. So, ladies and gentlemen, as part of Dave's Gone By, our story time today, and Potato, are you ready for story time? Uh-huh. Is it going to be, it's not going to be scary. I'm going to be talking about punishment, but in a just and moral sense. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe Potato, he's kind of picky in his story time tastes, but we'll leave him here. So you can have him looking at me, actually. That's better. Story time about punishment. And by the way, just so you know, for those of you playing at home, see also discipline for parents and children, feeding problems when a child won't eat, friction in the family, which I guess has to do with child sexual abuse, mother's job, night terrors, obedience, rewards and bribes are dangerous, shyness, and finally, truth and falsehood. So this whole book, I don't know if it's just a dictionary or this may be a dictionary of psychological behavior. But let us begin story time. Are you ready, Potato? Did you have your warm cup of butter? Yes. Okay, so he may fall asleep during this section. I may fall asleep during this, but we're going to try it anyway. When need for punishment arises in young children, it is because of one of three types of punishment situations. Situation is, I should have brought my glasses. The first is caused by the irritability or the vindictiveness of the parent. The second is due to failure on the part of the parent to understand the impulses and reasoning of the child. And the third is the misfortune of an established habit on the child's part of expecting punishment, which results in growing callousness to right and wrong. So basically, this is how to bring up a sociopath. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? Okay. I can't keep this page open. How to prevent the first type of punishment situation is obvious, but it is not easy. It involves a very difficult emotional re-education of the parent. Now, do understand that I'm reading this possibly from an angry parent who tore this out of a book. But maybe took it a little too personally. So it may be, let me find this again. It involves very difficult emotional re-education of the parent. This re-education has to be largely self-initiated and self-conducted. It may mean correction of physical difficulties from which the parent suffers. It might be reducing fatigue with longer periods for sleep and relaxation and adding help in the home. Or it may mean that the adult needs to find intellectual or recreational interests outside of the home that will make her a more contented person. Kind of neat that they were using the female pronoun, not because we're automatically assuming it's a male parent and him, and they're being very feminist, but this was probably written in the day when it was assumed that the person doing the punishing and raising the child was female. Let's see, it is a problem of mental hygiene. Hygiene, okay. Number 2, failure to understand the child. Does anybody actually understand children? Sorry, this book is giving me coronavirus, it's so old. There we go. The second type of punishment punishment situation. Failure to understand the child is more common. On the one hand, we punish for immaturity, and on the other, for the very process of development. Faltering fingers with imperfectly coordinated muscles perilously encircle a tumbler. That's actually very nicely written, isn't it? A yet untamed attention dissipates the feeble energy. The tumbler falls, and an unbelievable amount of milk is... Oh dear, I'm going back. This is so appropriate. I assumed that we were starting with punishment, but actually now we're going to go to the previous page, page 671. Okay, forget everything that I've just told you. For descriptive purposes, we can say that the child has developed a fighting attitude. If, on the one hand, he finds that he solves his problems by shrinking and retiring behavior, he will tend to use the same shrinking procedure whenever thwarted, and we can say that he has an attitude of fear. Well, and then we move on to wholesome and unwholesome attitudes, which is basically what you will find on this radio program every single episode. From the study of a large number of children, we have learned that certain attitudes are more wholesome than others. I wonder how many millions they spent on that study. That is, some attitudes are more likely to lead to his ultimate happiness than are others. 3 attitudes that we believe are wholesome are aggressiveness, joyousness, and love for others. The reasons why they are wholesome is that they're all positive in their directive influence on the child. They lead to overt behavior, which may have promise of success, and they lead to successful adjustment with the world and with other people. Isn't that nice? Attitudes which should be regarded as danger signals, and yeah, I'm talking to you. I am looking at you. Are attitudes of shrinking fear, the attitude of hate, all lead to, you understand that I'm trying to read this on a torn page here, all lead to the child withdrawing from real life and emphasizing his own individual experiences with little regard for the objective world in which he is placed. The integrated child is one who is adjusted to his environment, and any attitude which indicates a partial or potential failure in such adaptation is a danger signal. So basically, you're basically watching a maladaptive personality from the get-go, from 9 a.m. until noon or thereabouts. That's what you get right here on Dave's Gone By. Furthermore, the wholesome child should not specialize in any one attitude exclusively. There are times to fight and times to fear. To every time, fight, fear, fear. There is a season, fight. There are times to be calm and times to be excited. There are times to love and times to hate. Well, they stole that one from the Bible. The harder one finds it to describe a child's attitude, the better is the indication that his is a wholesome personality. And that comes to us from Dr. John J.B. Morgan, Ph.D. And you know, when you're reading someone who has to put in not only his first and last name, but both his initials, and put PhD after his name, you know there's something of a maladaptive personality right there as well. Anyway, that is our story time for the day, reading from this errant piece of paper that I found on the street this past week. All told, I probably shouldn't have. Well, what did you think of our story, Potato? Did you like our story time today? Wake up, Potato. I'm just, oh, God, I'm afraid. Oh, I'm shying away from you. Oh, okay, now, Potato, that is not a healthy thing to do. Watch it, son of a bitch! Or, no, that's not healthy either. But I'm displaying both sides of a personality. I'm well adjusted. You know, there's something to that. Maybe you are indeed. Take a bow, Potato. This is Potato's moment on the Dave's Gone By show. Thank you. And scene. Well done, Potato. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Dave's Gone By with me, Dave Lefkowitz. It's about 10 after, well, it's 12 after 12 in the Daverhood Eastern Time. We still have our Colorado Limerick of the Damned to go, but I want to give a thank you again to our two guests in the Daverhood today, who were really delightful and so open about their careers and had such a fun time talking with Rabbi Saul. I am, of course, talking about Lonny Price, the actor and director. You're going to want to go see. You're going to want to take that next JetBlue, or, well, it won't be Southwest, it'll be sort of northwesty, up to Calgary, Canada, and go see The Louder We... what was the name of it? I'm sorry. Forgive me for not remembering off the top of my head. It was The Louder We Get at Theatre Calgary, and then, of course, up to London, where he'll be directing Beaches later in the year. So thank you so much to Lonny Price. Really a delight to have him in the Daverhood. And thank you so much to Danny and Christopher, who helped set up that interview. Really appreciate that. And thank you as well, of course, to Lou Liberatore and Emily, I think helped us get him on the show too. So we thank her very, very much. Let's see. They are now, Lou and Lonny, are now official friends of the Daverhood. Those are people who've appeared on the program, and we're proud to say that they've been guests on the show. Well, what happens is we follow our friends and family of the Daverhood, and we like to see what they're up to long after they've been on the show. And we do that in a segment that we like to call Friends of the Daverhood. So our Friends of the Daverhood for this Saturday, February 8th, 2020. Let me find my paper here. Here we go. Those include the marvelous singer and actress Tova Feldshuh, one of Rabbi Saul's favorites for obvious reasons. She's at Feinstein's 54 Below tonight. Go see her. Or if you've already seen her, you might want to see Mark Nadler. He is at the Laurie Beachman Theater at the West Bank Cafe. That is also tonight. Tonight as well, if you are in another part of New York, in White Plains, go see Jackie the Joke Man Martling. He is at the Comedy Club up there in White Plains tonight. Or if you're on Long Island, you might want to schlep out to Westbury. It'd be worth it because you get to see Neil Berg's 100 Years of Broadway. That is tonight as well. Finally, we can move to tomorrow, where you can see Daniel Kahner's Jewish Chronicles at the Soho Playhouse downtown. Or you can go to Don't Tell Mama and see Ian Finkel and Elliot Finkel, that's his brother, Ian Finkel's band. Ian is a xylophonist extraordinaire. So if you've never seen a live xylophonist, and it is one of the rare times on the program that we've had parent and child on Dave's Gone By, because Ian Finkel's father was Fivish Finkel, the late Fivish. He was on our show. And then a few years later, we had Ian too. So go see him Sunday at Don't Tell Mama. On Monday, our very talented friend Greg Kogas is in a reading of a play by Jeremy Korekin called The Red Wool. And that is being done at a private New York City venue on Monday. Then on Wednesday, you've got Edward Einhorn will be reading his play, The Shylock and the Shakespeareans. That is free to get into, and they're doing it at Here over on 6th Avenue downtown. On Friday, Juliana Hatfield will be at the Music Hall of Williamsburg in Brooklyn, so do go see her. On Friday and Saturday, going into next week now, we've got Barb Younger doing her new cabaret show, Bob, Brel, and Me. That is being done at Joe's Pub. And Bob being Bob Dylan, Brel being Jacques Brel, and Barb Younger, of course, being Barb Younger. That is happening Friday and Saturday at Joe's Pub. And by the way, I mentioned Edward Einhorn before. His autobiographical play, Doctors Jane and Alexander, all about his parents, that is being done by the Untitled Theater Company number 61, which he runs, and they're doing that play through next weekend at Here. Let's see, Gerard Alessandrini, I mentioned earlier in the show, Forbidden Broadway, The Next Generation. That is running at the York Theater through next weekend. Richard Eyre is directing the drama My Name is Lucy Barton, starring Laura Linney. That is at the Samuel J. Friedman Theater on Broadway. Anne Harada is in Emoji Land at the Duke Theater on 42nd Street. I believe that was extended a week and is now running through mid-March. Raymond Bahur is on Broadway in Chicago at the Ambassador Theater. He was just on our show about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Katsura Sunshine is doing his solo show Rakugo at New World Stages through late April. Off-Broadway, Little Shop of Horrors was recently extended to mid-May. So congratulations, and of course that show features music by Alan Menken. Andre DeShields, our Tony-winning friend, he is in Hadestown at the Walter Kerr Theater. Irene Sankoff and David Hein are the creators of Come From Away, a beautiful musical. Danny Burston is in Moulin Rouge at the Hirschfeld, while Daniel Breaker is in Hamilton on Broadway at the Richard Rogers Theater. Oh, and I mentioned J.O. Sanders tuned into the show a little earlier. He is on Broadway in Girl from the North Country. That is the musical they made from a bunch of Bob Dylan songs that ran at the Public Theater last year, and now it's coming to Broadway. It's going to be opening in a couple of weeks. It's Girl from the North Country at the Belasco Theater. I can make this a lower. Hold on. Mozart is distracting me. There we go. A couple more things in our Friends of the Daverhood segment to get through. Jim Caruso's Cast Party every Monday night at Birdland. It's kind of like a variety show where you get, it's an open mic night, but the people who do it are folks who are on Broadway, or the chorus people of Broadway shows, or sometimes some big celebrities show up too. It's Jim Caruso's Cast Party every Monday night at Birdland. Evan Seplow is the founder and editor of StageBuddy.com. Let's see. Dr. Demento, still doing Dr. Demento shows at drdemento.com. Leslie Hoban Blake and Charlie Gross, they co-host a theater review show called Two on the Aisle that you can find on Manhattan Neighborhood Network Television. That is also where you can watch Eva Heinemann and her theater review show, High Drama. Bob Cudmore doing podcasts about upstate New York history at bobcudmore.com. Phil Mushnick, still writing about sports and media in the New York Post. And of course, you're going to want to read TotalTheater.com, TotalTheater.com, for theater reviews from all over the country, including those written by Ann Siegel in Milwaukee. Where are we? Mary Sheng Barnage in Chicago, and Willard Manis in Los Angeles. Do check them out. And finally, you're going to want to check out Tanya Pinkins doing her podcast, You Can't Say That, on both Google Talk and YouTube. And those, my friends, are the Friends of the Daverhood. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are doing the Dave's Gone By Facebookio Podcastio of the stream. With me, Dave Lefkowitz. I also was reminded, or I reminded myself, that we were doing the Inside Broadway segment a little while ago, and I didn't get to finish the segment. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to do a little bit of a part 2 of Inside Broadway. I'm going to keep it pretty quick, because I know we're already 20 minutes overtime on the show. And by the way, welcome to Monique and Nancy and our new viewer, Joe and Blake and all the other folks who've been tuning in. But yeah, Inside Broadway, I don't want to leave out that Terry Hands passed away last week on February 4th at the age of 79. He's the guy who founded the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool, and he also ran the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company, during one of its most successful periods ever for about 13 years. As a matter of fact, he was with the RSC, for 26 years, including a period where he co-ran it with Trevor Nunn. He staged Shakespeare's History Cycle there, and in Rep, he ran Cyrano de Bergerac and Much Ado About Nothing, which, if you remember, came to Broadway in repertory with Derek Jacobi. So one of the first celebrity interviews I ever did was when Derek Jacobi was in those shows, and I was interviewing him, and I saw him in Cyrano. He was marvelous. But anyway, Terry Hands staged the musical Carrie that came to Broadway. It was a big flop, but it was a kind of a cause célèbre. And he also staged kind of an underrated Macbeth that starred Kelsey Grammer on Broadway about 15, 20 years ago. After that, he left the RSC and went to run a theater in Wales that was failing, and he brought it back into prominence as the biggest theater in Wales, and he spent about 17 years there, and he's directed plays and operas around the world. He was a 3-time Tony nominee, including, kind of interesting, he was not only a director, but a designer, and he designed the lighting for both Cyrano de Bergerac and Much Ado About Nothing, and was Tony nominated for those. So a big farewell, hands up for Terry Hands, who passed away this past week. And I do want to give a positive shout out, a positive review to this show. I'm sorry that I didn't get to talk about it before, but it's Border People with Dan Hoyle playing a bunch of characters based on conversations he actually had with real people with various borders in their lives. Now, very often it's an actual physical border. It's not being able to cross from Mexico into the US, or be able to cross back and get back in, or to cross from Canada into the United States, or even some people just have borders in their lives of jobs they can't get, or things they can't do, or places that they can't go. Dan Hoyle talked to some people in the Bronx about that. A lot of these people are people of color, people with accents and various ethnicities. Hoyle is this attractive, like youngish to middle-aged, really, really white guy. So there's this fear that he might be appropriating, or if he couldn't get the accents right or the movements right, it's like a white guy trying to be street, a white guy trying to do this. But he does his impersonations, if you will, with such empathy and affection that it's absolutely part and parcel of the show. It's like when Anna Devere Smith did Fires in the Mirror. You say, oh, okay, she's going to do a Jewish woman from Crown Heights. Let's see. And the way she was doing it, and the empathy and the feeling that she felt for those people came through, even as she's doing a physicalization of those folks. So he does that as well, Dan Hoyle, when he's talking, when he in person was talking to interviews of immigrants in the Bronx, or there's one, the show opens with him playing a state trooper. And it's actually, a state trooper is a Hispanic fellow who wants to be a stand-up comedian. So immediately it throws us on it, because we think, oh, okay, here's what's going to happen. Dan Hoyle is going to play this white, redneck, evil state trooper who's stopping some immigrant at the border. And it isn't that at all. It's this border immigration guy who is checking things, who is very personable, who is actually quite funny as a stand-up comedian wannabe. And it's that kind of, we think we know what we're going to see in Border People, and then sometimes it's thrown on its head. There's another person who lives very close to a border, and he sees people going back all and forth all the time. He's a gay guy, so it's unexpected that he lives there, and he's sort of a live and let live kind of person. It's really everything that you think is this show is going to be about. It is, but it also isn't. And Hoyle is an expert in terms of being able to mimic these people in a way that and as with actors, they find 2 or 3 things. There's a certain way that he will stand, a certain prominence of his lower jaw that Dan Hoyle will put forward, and a certain thing that he does with his voice, and 2 or 3 things, and suddenly we know it's a whole different character, whole different, perhaps, class, whole different ethnicity, race, and so forth, but we go with it, and we know exactly, oh, this is totally someone else. And there's laughs, there's a couple of poignant touches, but it isn't, if you're worried that it's going to be a political polemic or a tearjerker, it is neither. It is just bringing you into the lives of all these people who, in some cases, have pretty desperate lives or have carved surprisingly good lives out of very difficult circumstances. Now, you can go see Border People. It is at the ART New York Theater, and it's a complex that they have, and one of their theaters is called the Goral Theater. It's up on, like, all the way west. It's over, like, on 11th Avenue. So it's a little bit out of the way, but definitely worth seeking out. Border People. It is running now through February 22nd only. I would be surprised if it doesn't extend or if they don't move it somewhere. And well, what's kind of nice again is beautifully produced, because there's some video that also sets the scene, some music and lighting. There's also an acknowledgement by at least one of the characters that, okay, you can't just have completely open borders in America, but we should have some reasonable way of dealing with all the people who want to come here and want to come here for all the right reasons. So yeah, go see Border People off Broadway. I don't know. It's such a short run and it's a smallish theater. It might technically be off Broadway, but go see it at ART New York, featuring Dan Hoyle. Good stuff. Okay, well, that brings us out of Inside Broadway for this Saturday, February 8th, 2020. Are we done with the show yet? Well, we've done so much. We've had our guests, right? And I've done some yapping at you, and we've gone Inside Broadway, and we did our Friends of the Daverhood and our story time. Just a couple more minutes left, because, oh my gosh, how could we leave without doing our weekly Colorado Limerick of the damn. You're the poetry man.
A limerick is a comic verse of 5 lines, in which lines 1, 2, and 5 end with words that rhyme. And likewise, verses 3 and 4 also end with words that rhyme. So this is a limerick. Rocky Mountain, Colorado,
Mm-hmm. Our Colorado Limerick of the Damned. We do these every week because my wife and I, before moving back to New York, we were living in Colorado for about 9 years. And for no reason at all, I got it into my head, some place in Colorado clicked in my brain. And I thought, oh, I can rhyme a couple of words with this in a funny way. And I did, and I created a limerick. And then another one. And another and another. And now I've got about 80 different limericks about all different towns and places and municipalities in Colorado. And I like to bring you one every single week here on Dave's Gone By. So our Colorado Limerick of the Damned for this week is a place I had never heard of called Arboles, Colorado. Arboles, of course, means trees. So I guess it's a more green and leafy area of the state. It's actually a county. Arboles, no, I'm sorry, it's part of Archuleta County, I believe. In Arboles, you've got about 300 people living in a 5 square mile radius. It's over in southwestern Colorado, and that's really all I was able to find about it on the internet. I mean, from Wiki and visitcolorado.com and everything, there's just nothing about this 5 mile square radius of America, of Colorado, called Arboles, Colorado. But I'm going to put them on the map right here and right now. Dave, here on Dave's Gone By, is going to give Colorado and the folks of Arboles, Colorado, a reason to go on. I'm going to make their mark. I'm going to make them famous right here by doing a horrible, crude, disgusting, tasteless limerick about them, as we do every week in our Colorado Limerick of the Damned. So sweep the kiddies out of the room. Potato, look the other way. It's time for our Limerick of the Damned for Arboles, Colorado. ahem. The sweet little town of Arboles has 200 perverts and no less. They sit in the shade and drink lemonade and shove dildos in their cornholes. Yes, that's our Colorado Limerick of the Dam, ladies and gentlemen, for Saturday, February 8th, 2020. Please address your comments and complaints and hate mail to davesgoneby@aol.com. That's davesgoneby@aol.com. And of course, you can also message me right here on this Facebook page. The Facebook page is called Dave's Gone By, in case you didn't know. In case you wanted to tell your friends, your family, your enemies, your coworkers, your local politicians, hey, this show is on every Saturday morning from 9 until noon. Check it out on this Facebook page, Dave's Gone By. I want to remind you that our archives are at davesgoneby.com. Now, my Twitter feed is Radio Dave 2, Radio Dave and the number 2, and that you can also find our more recent archives at both archive.org, and if you're looking for audio only that's listenable as a podcast, go to castbox.fm. Castbox.fm. Well, I do want to thank one more time all the folks who helped me put this show together. First of all, and foremost of all, my darling, wonderful, and adorable wife, Joyce, who created this montage that you see behind me. She cut out all the hearts. Her idea to do the Mad Libby thing. Thank you. Thank you so much to my wonderful wife. I wish you were here. Thank you to Lonny Price for being in the Daverhood. Go see the show that he is directing, which is up in Calgary, Theatre Calgary, in fact, in Canada, but I'm sure we'll have a life after that. It's called The Louder We Get. So go see it. It's running for a couple of weeks there. And you're also going to want to see now from March 1st, Lou Liberatore, off-Broadway in Paradise Lost. That is playing at the Theatre Row Theatre over around 9th Avenue on West 42nd Street, Paradise Lost, featuring two shows with our friends of the Daverhood, Lou and Lonny. Really, really delightful to have them both. Remember that Rabbi Saul Solomon has his website, shalomdammit.com. Shalom, D-A-M-M-I-T, shalomdammit.com. You can also email him, shalomdammit@aol.com. And of course, his Twitter feed is at Rabbi Saul Solomon. Always, and remember, if you go to that website, shalomdammit.com, you can hear his rabbinical reflections. There are these sermons that he does. You can see his one-man stage show that he's trying to bring back to New York in a cool way. And you can also watch his hilarious television show that he did on Long Island cable TV about 10 or so years ago. It's all there at shalomdammit.com. Check out Rabbi Saul. Well, speaking of friends of the Daverhood and guests and wonderful guests, we've got some great ones coming up in the weeks ahead. I'm gonna mention them because they're pretty much a done deal. So yay. So next week on the show, we're gonna manage to get them on Shabbos. We'll have to fudge this one a little bit. But there's an English Orthodox Jewish comedian named Ashley Blaker. Is a man. Is his first name. The English have those girly names, but it's Ashley Blaker, and he's gotten quite a name for himself by being both funny and being an actual observant Orthodox Jew. Ashley Blaker. So Rabbi Saul, of course, will be talking to Ashley Blaker, and he's going to be our guest next Saturday, February 15th, in the Daverhood. And then coming up in 2 weeks, so this is really great, somebody I've known for about 25, 30 years, a fellow named Scott Siegel. Now, Scott Siegel is a writer, he's a critic, he's written science fiction books with his wife, Barbara, but he's also the creator of a wonderful theater review, REVUE, called Broadway by the Year, that went from this little concert that he would do in small cabaret shows that now he does about 3 or 4 times a year in the town hall, this like 1,400 seat space in Midtown Manhattan. And he's going to have another one in a couple of weeks. And so just before that happens, Scott Siegel will be in the Daverhood to talk about theater, talk about, I guess, science fiction too, and Broadway by the year. That should be great. And then we even have planned for the middle of March, this is going to be amazing, my old boss, go figure, a fella who, by the way, speaking of theater, has written books about the Fantastics and A Chorus Line, and he also ran Playbill.com for a couple of years. His name is Robert Viagas, and he'll be joining us in the middle of March. So it's quite a group of folks that will be guesting on Dave's Gone By in the weeks ahead. To find out what will be on, remember, go to davesgoneby.com or just check this Facebook page a couple of times a week and we'll keep you posted. Well, it's 12:36 in the afternoon, Eastern Time. I've been on for 3.5 hours. It's time. But my gosh, I do want to wish you a most happy and healthy and delightful Valentine's Day. As someone who's had marvelous Valentine's Days and very lonely Valentine's Days throughout his life, don't, if you have someone that you love in your life, and it doesn't have to be a wife or spouse or girlfriend or partner or same sex or other sex, or any, it can be a relative. It can be a passion in your life. If you're going through a horrible breakup or something, or you can't find somebody new and your Tinder ain't working for you, then spend Valentine's Day with something that you love doing, or go to a restaurant that you love eating in. That's a way to express love, or do something nice for others and express, even though I'm a horrible misanthrope, you don't have to be. You can spend your time doing nice things for people and express love in the universe that way. However you decide to express it, happy pre-Valentine's Day to you all. I do hope you all find things that you love in your lives. I'm Dave Lefkowitz. This has been the Dave's Gone By Facebookio Podcastio Programmio of the stream. I'm going to play our little outro theme as we leave Sob the Daverhood. But I'll see you, God willing, a week from now in this chair, Saturday, 9 o'clock, February 15th. We'll have Ashley Blaker and Rabbi Saul back in the Daverhood, hopefully Joyce too, and me, Dave, gone by.
Dave's gone by. Dave's gone by. Dave's gone by. Dave's gone by. Dave's gone by.
Hearts and flowers to all of you for supporting Dave's Gone By, for being with us. How do they do that heart thing? I don't know. I don't know what the hell this is. Is that? I dig it. Sort of. There it is. Or if turn it upside down, it's an ass. Not really. Okay, I'm going to go. And gone by.